My name's Lena Ward. I'm 24. And today, in the middle of a hospital lobby that smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee, my mother tore my medical records and knocked my phone from my hand, so hard the screen shattered across the tile, while my father called me a selfish mistake. People like to say families break slowly. Well, the way paint cracks on a porch you stop looking at. I used to believe that because slow felt kinder than chosen, but some breaks are decisions. Some breaks have witnesses. The lobby had all the usual extras from a weekday morning: a toddler humming into his mother's coat, a volunteer pushing a cart of paperbacks with a sign that read, "Take one, leave one," a security guard by the information desk, scanning the room without really seeing it. My papers printed 10 minutes earlier by a clerk named Jasmine, who whispered the copier code like a secret 1456. Just press green scattered around my shoes like receipts. No one bothers to file. If you'd met us last year at a fundraiser, you'd think ordinary. Douglas Ward, Vice Principal and tie clip enthusiast. Marianne Ward, the woman who can turn any sentence into an announcement. Their daughter's Celeste, 2 years older, who makes achievement look like a lighting choice. And me? The quiet one who somehow gives everything the weather of almost. People squeezed my arm and said, "You're lucky. Your sister's a star." Lucky did a lot of heavy lifting at our house. Celeste was the golden child. We never said it out loud. The same way you don't announce gravity. At 12, she got the window seat because she gets motion sick, and I learned how to fold myself into the middle without rustling. At 16, she got a silver hatchback with a red bow. June 22, 2017, my mother saved the bow. I got a used bike that still had a faded route map taped to the frame from whoever loved it before me. Señor portrait $1. $200 for Celeste's deluxe package. $25 for mine with the school photographer because the budget's tight. Lena. Tight was elastic when Celeste circled things in a catalog. Those are the safe stories. The ones that sound like math. The sharper ones hide inside be reasonable. December 12, 2019. I worked 30 hours at the cafe to buy myself a $38 clearance sweater in a green that made my skin look less tired. On Christmas morning, Mom asked me to hand it to Celeste because green is more her color. And my father added, "Don't make a scene. It's Christmas." April 2020, I put the $312 apartment deposit on my card for a place Celeste and I planned to share. Her "I'll Venmo you" Friday became a month of unanswered reminders until Mom ended it with, "Sisters don't charge each other like landlords." May 14, 2021. My birthday cake had 3 candles left from someone else's party. At least you get the wish. Dad joked. For as long as I remember, the benediction after every slight was the same. Be grateful. We didn't have to take you in. I should have known that sentence would come back for me today. The older I get, the more I hear my life in echoes. 6 months ago, when Celeste's liver diagnosis arrived with its metallic name, the request started polite, then polished, then pointed. "Get tested." Mom said, "This is when families show up." Dad said, "I went alone on a rainy Thursday." March 6. I signed the form with my own pen. Noted the time 1007 a.m. Intake 1026, blood draw like a clerk filling a ledger. I didn't tell anyone because I wanted, for once, to have a fact that didn't arrive already belonging to someone else. On March 11 at 9:14 a.m., my phone chimed. National Donor Registry. Notification of results Ward. Lena. I opened it. I closed it. I opened it again. My blood type didn't match. Additional markers. Limited viability. Not a match. I stared at those 3 words until they turned into a steadying rail I could hold. Maybe, I thought, the pressure will stop before it starts. I didn't know pressure had learned 1,000 disguises. It arrived as an email calendar invite from my mother with time blocks highlighted in yellow, constant Aptalina. 3:30 p.m. As if the decision were clerical. It arrived as my father leaning against my doorway practicing his version of gentle, "Your sister needs you. Let's not be difficult. It arrived as a text from Celeste at 7:43 a.m. Sunday, bring your ID to the hospital. Nurse said they'll need it. No question mark. Ownership dressed as familiarity. So, I made a plan. Before I walked into the hospital today, get printed copies of every document with my name on it. Results. Forms. Timestamps. Receipts are oxygen when people keep trying to open windows in your memory. Jasmine at Medical Records printed the stack and slid it across the counter with a look that said she saw more than she said. I just flipped the first page when Marianne appeared. Red lipstick too bright for fluorescent light. Composure trimmed into an edge. You think you get to sit there and act like a victim? She asked. Voice ringing off glass and tile. The toddler looked over, then buried his face deeper. Your sister is dying and you're doing nothing. I'm here, I said. It sounded thinner than I felt. What I meant was, I have been here, middle seats. Borrowed dresses. Applause aimed past me. But lobbies don't take essays. They accept proofs. Douglas arrived like weather. Neutrale expression. School assembly posture. Shadow landing across my shoes. Don't make this harder, he said. And then, lower. The line that made something in me still. You've always been a problem we didn't need. The security guard shifted. Alert without approaching. People watch the way people do when pain becomes public, present but distant. Invested only as far as a story can travel over dinner later. I need printed copies, I told Jasmine. Louder, but still careful. All consent forms with my name. My lab results. The audit entries that mention my account. I know how to speak in nouns when verbs fail me. Jasmine's printer started its shrugging rhythm again. Marianne's hand darted out and ripped the top packet. Paper screamed at the staple. Half my name dangled. A torn bridge midspan. I crouched automatically, gathering jagged rectangles. Not from guilt, from the urgency of someone who has watched truth get repackaged too many times to leave it lying around. I didn't raise you to be ungrateful, Marianne said, stepping close enough that her perfume folded over me. We gave you everything. I looked up into eyes that have never learned how to land on me without measuring. You gave me what you thought I owed you for, I said. She blinked. And for a moment, something true and small fell through her posture, then she chose her script again. Her voice climbed. You're letting your sister die. It cracked across the lobby like a headline. Behind the glass wall. Celeste watched from a wheelchair. Ivy pole parked like a patient companion. She caught my eye and smiled, not gratitude. Possession. The look that says, see. Even now. The orbit holds. I reached for my phone to photograph the torn signatures. To log the time. Marianne's hand flashed again, not a slap. Exactly. More, the hard heel of a palm meant to redirect, and my phone exploded against the tile into glittering shards. The toddler cried at the sound. The security guard moved in. Voice calm. Ma'am. Step back. My cheeks went hot. Not from humiliation, but from the cold. Clean understanding that even objects with my name on them are unsafe around certain people. Log this as an incident, I told the guard. Voice steadier than my hands. Damaged property in the lobby. I will need a copy of the report. He nodded. Took my makeshift evidence cup. Jasmine handed me a paper water cone, and I brushed the fragments and wrote my name as I spelled it twice. For the first time all day, I felt the faint relief that comes when a detail gets pinned to paper. Doctor. Heating navy jacket. Clipped badge. The kind of steady people practice appeared at my shoulder. Drawn by the noise or by protocol. Miss Ward, he said. Let's step to the side. He had the tone of someone escorting turbulence off a plane. We moved 3 feet to the left, which felt like crossing a border. From a medical ethics standpoint, he said. Level. Withholding results or misrepresenting consent is serious. We will document what occurred here, including property damage. We can also provide you with printed copies of your lab results and any audit trail entries associated with your profile. Please do, I said. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. But the part of me that files kept working. Dates. Times. Names. Celeste rolled closer, stopping just behind the "no food beyond this point" sign. "You showed up," she said, as if checking attendance. "So why make this circus?" "I came to give facts to the people who need them," I said, "not to be turned into a solution you already decided I was." She tilted her head like a teacher choosing a tact. "If you loved me, you'd try." "I did," I said, and even in the noise, I felt how quietly true it was. I got tested. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Jasmine stack fresh pages, the lab summary with my incompatible blood type, the registry email header with its timestamp, a notation line that would later matter more than I knew. I slid them into a new manila folder like a person building a raft board by board. For a beat, everything stilled, the kind of stillness that comes after a dropped tray in a restaurant. Everyone's eyes held in the same direction. Then life did what it always does, moved on a half-inch. The volunteer's paperback cart squeaked. An elevator chimed. Someone's laughter overshot and corrected. I stood up with my folder and felt the tiniest reassembly inside my chest. Not a fix, just a hinge oiled. Hope is dangerous in a family like mine. It arrives bright, then apologizes for itself. But in that paused, between moment, I let myself hold a thin version of it. Maybe here. Facts, outrank volume. Maybe paper can keep shape. Maybe no can be a full sentence and not a dare. Still, another voice, the one I've earned, whispered its warning. I should have known. I should have known that people who build a life on a story will do almost anything to keep the set standing. I should have known that 7 calm words, when they came, would tilt the room, not biologically related at all. I should have known you can't hand someone a boundary and expect them to thank you for it. "Miss Ward," the security guard said, returning with a small carbon copy in a plastic sleeve. "Incident report. Timestamped 11:12 AM. You can request the full record at the front desk." I slid it into the folder with the broken glass shimmer still caught on my skin. "Thank you," I said, and meant it. Clarity protects you, even when it can't comfort you. Douglas adjusted his tie like he could fix the morning by aligning stripes. "Enough drama," he said. His calm curdled. "Let's be the family we claim to be." In another life, I might have grasped at that olive branch carved from air. In this one, I heard the quiet click of a lock I had ignored for years. Being a family isn't a performance, I said. It's consent. It's truth. I turned to Jasmine. "Could you also print any note that shows who has proxy access on Celeste's case?" I asked. Her eyebrows rose a fraction. She nodded. "It'll list roles and what they can do," she said. "View. Message. Sometimes request scheduling." She didn't say more, but I heard the subtext in some systems. People with proxy access to a recipient can see or trigger steps for a potential living donor because the donor is logged under the recipient's case. The thought slid in next to the memory of my mother at the kitchen island in July. Fingers flying over my open laptop, offering to help with the forms because I type faster. Little locks. Everywhere. Pretending to be convenience. As I waited for the proxy printout, I stepped to the water fountain. The cold metallic taste steadied me. I watched my reflection in the brushed steel, a person holding paper like armor. Hair a little wild. Eyes a little too bright. Not lost. Not found. Suspended between. Behind me. Marianne started again. "Quieter now. The way you talk when you want to sound reasonable on a recording." "Lena." "Sweetheart," she said, trying to rethread us. "We can fix any misunderstandings. Don't drag strangers into what's private." "You put it in public," I said without turning. "You scheduled a press conference for tomorrow. You want a stage? I'll bring dates." She exhaled sharply, and I could feel the shape of her choosing the next angle grievance dressed as concern. It used to work on me. It still tugged. A reflex. My body hasn't unlearned. But I had a new reflex now: print. Timestamp. Log. Jasmine slid the final page across proxy access Celeste Ward. Under granted to. The names Marianne Ward view. Message. Scheduling requests. Douglas Ward view. Plus a generic family liaison account, sometimes used by the transplant team. I didn't yet know how much this sheet would matter. I just knew it belonged with the others. Allison, the transplant coordinator, appeared in the corridor and caught my eye. "We have a room," she said gently. "Quiero. If you want time to organize." "I do," I said. I gathered the paper's results. Incident report. Proxy permissions. My own name, printed correctly twice, and followed Allison away from the lobby's echo. As the elevator doors slid open, I looked back once. Celeste's expression had shifted, not the satisfied little curve from earlier. Not yet anything like contrition. Something brittle around the edges. Douglas rubbed his temple. Marianne watched the elevator with a stare. I recognized the look of someone calculating how to turn a boundary into a prop. The doors closed. In the mirrored steel, my face looked like a person mid-bridge, choosing which bank counts as home. Somewhere above, a light flickered and steadied. I held the folder tighter. Paper has weight when it means you. When it refuses to be rearranged into someone else's headline. I breathed in for 4. Out for 6. The elevator hummed a note that sounded a lot like a line. I was finally ready to speak in every room that asked me to shrink. "My name is Lena Ward. And this time, it matters." Allison led me into a small consultation room that looked onto the parking garage frosted glass. A round table. Fourchère. The kind of neutral space designed to hold whatever walked in. She poured water into a cone cup. Crucially, didn't fill the silence with pep talk. She just waited. After the lobby. That felt like a blanket. "I need my file to reflect the full record," I said. "I was tested 6 months ago. The registry sent me an email with the decision. I want the hospital to have it on paper." "Do you have the message?" she asked. I opened my inbox, searched National Donor Registry, and slid the phone across subject line: notification of results Ward. Lena. Timestamp ne peditosa. M. Tuesday, March 11. Allison read slowly. The way someone reads when details matter. This notes ABO incompatibility and low viability based on additional markers, she said. Voice even. "So, you are not a candidate." I told no one at the time. I said, "Not to withhold. I wanted one clean fact to stand between me and pressure." She nodded, like she knew that shape of hope. "We rely on informed, voluntary consent," she said. "If there was any suggestion otherwise, we'll take that seriously. I'll add this email to your chart. We'll also print your lab summary so it lives in the hospital record, not just your inbox." A knock. A man with damp hair and a clipped badge stepped in. "Dr. Keating," he said. We shook hands. He set a thin folder on the table. "Ms. Ward, I've reviewed your chart and need to confirm a few timestamps. Initial screening, March 6. 1007 intake. 10:26 blood draw. Registry email March 11. 914. Correct. Yes." He turned a page. Our audit trail shows an entry on September 2 at 1131 a.m. A checkbox labeled "Potential living donor has not yet been tested" was toggled to true. The action came through the recipient care pathway, your sister's case, using proxy access assigned to your mother. The floor didn't drop so much as tilt. How could my mother's proxy touch anything tied to me, I asked, careful to keep accusation out of my tone. I wanted clarity, not drama. Allison answered. Practical. When a living donor is evaluated for a specific recipient here, we build a linked workflow so the transplant team can see both tracks, recipient and potential donors side by side. It's not your full medical chart, But some clerical status fields live in that combined workspace, so scheduling can move. A family proxy on the recipient's side should only be able to view and message. Maybe request appointments, not change donor status. That's why the audit matters. It shows something changed from a proxy context, which violates how the access is supposed to be used. Dr. Keating added, will retrieve the granular metadata, IP, user session, exact field path, and involve compliance, regardless of intent. Altering a donor status flag when the donor has already tested is a red line. Please print the audit entry with date and time, I said, and anything that lists who has proxy permissions on Celeste's case. Allison jotted a note. I'll pull the proxy access roles and permission screen and print it. A memory flickered. July 18. The week after Celeste's diagnosis. My mother at the kitchen island with my open laptop. I'll help with the forms. I typed faster. I had turned to rinse a glass. Keys pattered. Helpful can be a costume. Allison slid over a stapled packet. This is the consent form currently attached to your name. The signature looked close enough to fool a stranger. But I saw the tell my R in Word always dips. This one didn't. The date read, August 7. I pulled my phone, scrolled photos, and set a picture on the table, a cracked office mug with a timestamp of 3:49 p.m. August 7. Portland geotagged. I didn't sign this, I said. My voice had steadied into the tone I use for facts. We'll flag it for internal review, Allison said. And I'll submit a request for the digital signature metadata originating device. Entry account. Exact time. In the meantime, two things are non-negotiable. You are not compatible. And nothing involving your body proceeds without your signed consent. That note is going onto your chart in bold. My phone buzzed. Celeste, how long is this going to take? If we wrap consent today, I can move to pre-op Thursday. No punctuation. No, please. I typed. Deleted. Typed again. I'm not a match. I wrote. Registry emailed me. March 11. The hospital has it now. 3 dots pulsed. Vanished. Returned. You should have told me. She sent. I counted on you. I kept my reply simple. I went to the lab. I did the test. The result isn't mine to change. A second knock. Dr. Keating reappeared with a manila envelope. Odi print, he said. And then, one more clarification. Your March panel included something we don't always run for donors, but sometimes appears when a recipient and potential donor are processed together, a kinship marker panel. Think of it as a parentage divided by relatedness index, used to support compatibility workups within families. Our internal protocol occasionally adds it to reduce false assumptions. Your initial flags prompted us to repeat a limited check today. It won't change the compatibility decision, but it confirms a point we have to be precise about before we speak it aloud. The room cooled by a degree. You're telling me the same panel that showed I'm not a match also hinted I'm not related, I said. No drama. Just lining up rails. I'm saying not a match can mean ABO, HLA, or other markers, he said. In your case, those didn't align. And the kinship index, rerun today, indicates non-relatedness. We'll document that in clinical language, and we'll be very careful with how and when we disclose. I nodded. Words enter as weather first, meaning second. The window fogged where my breath met it. The door opened without a knock. Marianne stepped in. Douglas behind her. Allison rose. A quiet wall and a cardigan. Ms. Ward. This is a patient consultation, she said evenly. Please wait outside. This is my daughter, Marianne said. It's still her consultation, Allison replied. No sharpness. Just policy worn smooth. We just want a minute, Douglas added. Voice pitched for reasonableness. I kept my seat. We're done for today, I said. Finding out as I spoke that the sentence fit in my mouth. The hospital has my March 11 result. I'm not a donor. You knew. Because the registry emailed me, and the audit shows a box checked on September 2 claiming I hadn't been tested. Marianne's expression stuttered something small and human breaking through before the mask reformed. Those emails are automated. She said, clerical stuff is often wrong. We thought we were keeping options open. Options aren't facts. I said. And clerical isn't consent. Doctor. Keating cleared his throat, bringing the conversation back to the rails. To avoid any further confusion, ABO is incompatible. The HLA divided by marker set is not supportive. And, based on today's confirmatory relatedness check, Ms. Ward and Ms. Celeste Ward are not biologically related. The sentence was simple. 7 words long in its heart. Not biologically related at all. Marianne reached for the chair back and sat down too fast. Douglas's face did math and failed to find a number that made this okay. Celeste, in the doorway now, gripped the IV pole and looked at me with something that wasn't performance, at least not only performance. I didn't gloat. I didn't crumble. I looked at my mother. You could have told me in a kitchen with the dishwasher running. I said quietly. You let a school bus tell me when I was 10 and called it love because you were the ones who didn't say it. She opened and closed her mouth. We were going to tell you. She whispered. There was never a right time. There's never a right time to stop lying. I said. There's only now. Silence settled. A hospital, kind vent hiss. Cartwheels. Somewhere. A beeping that resolved and stopped. Allison slid a card across to me. Ethics is opening a review. She said. Here's my direct line. Also, for clarity from this moment, any transplant-related communication to you should come through me or Ray, our patient advocate. That way, nothing gets distorted. Douglas tried one more angle. The calm creed. In our family, we do what needs to be done. I met his eyes. In our family, I've been what needed to be done. That's different. Ray arrived late 50s. Neat mustache. Tie with sailboats and took the chair next to Allison. I can log the lobby incident with security, he said, glancing at the carbon copy, peeking from my folder. We'll also add a no contact about surgery without advocate present note to your chart. He turned to my parents. To protect everyone, please direct all questions to the coordinator's office. We'll provide updates that are limited to verified facts. Celeste stepped into the room. IV wheels clicking. Do you know what it's like? She said softly. To listen to your own liver, fail, and know your sister is right there choosing not to help. I chose to get tested. I said. Exactly. The answer was no. I don't control that. She swallowed. People fight decisions. They appeal. Insurance décision. I said. Not biology. We let that sit. In the pause, Allison returned with 2 printouts and placed them in front of me. The audit line. Sep 2. 1131A. M. Proxy path and proxy access roles listing. Under granted. 2. Marianne Ward view. Message. Request scheduling. Douglas Ward view. Family liaison internal. A neat table. A quiet indictment. Ray stood. We're going to end this meeting, he said kindly, but final. Ms. Ward has what she needs today, the lab summary, the registry email captured to chart, the audit entry, the proxy list, and coordinator contact. We'll walk her out via the service corridor. Marianne's voice turned coaxing. The last dial she always tries. Sweetheart, don't bring strangers into. You scheduled a press conference. I said. You already did. We left before anyone could answer. In the hall, a volunteer pushed a cart of books. Take one. Leave one. I didn't take a book. I left a version of myself there, the one who believed that if she said yes enough, someone would learn to see her, The elevator doors opened. Allison pressed the button for a staff level that smells like floor wax and copier toner. Somewhere, a machine finished a job with a satisfied click. As the doors slid shut, Ray said, "I'll meet you downstairs in 10 with the incident number from security." Practicalities. Rails. I nodded. My reflection looked back at me from brushed steel tired. A little wild. Not drowning. The folder in my arms weighed what it needed to weigh results that don't bend. An audit trail that can't be argued with. A proxy list that explains exactly how a box got checked it shouldn't have. And a single sentence that would carry its own gravity into whatever came next. I am not a compatible donor. And consent is not a chore you assign. Ray walked me to a side exit and pressed a card with his direct line into my palm. "Document everything," he said. "Times. Dates. Who said what? Clarity protects you." The door eased shut behind us into the loading bay's cool shade. I wanted to sit on the curb and let the concrete hold me up. But instead I did what I always do when chaos tries to swallow me. I opened notes and made a list. March 6, 1007 a.m. Intake. 10:26 blood draw. March 1, 1914 a.m. Email. Not a match. August 7, 3:48 p.m. Forged consent appears. I was in Portland. Photo of cracked mug. 3:49 p.m. September 2, 1131 a.m. Proxy path toggles donor, not yet tested to true, from recipient's workspace, mother's proxy. Typing steadied me. The manila folder under my arm felt like a spine I could borrow until mine remembered its job. My phone vibrated. A text from Celeste hovered at the top of the screen. "If you loved me, you'd at least try." I didn't answer. I scrolled up through years of thread history balloon emojis for her milestones. Logistics from me. May 18. Last year, window seat PS. I wrote back. Sure. Then slept upright in the middle while she dozed against cold glass. Small. Survivable concessions that taught my muscles. One motion, only yield. I called Nisha. She picked up on the first ring. Kettle in the background. A neighbor's dog complaining at nothing. "Say you're indoors," she said. "I'm indoors," I said. "And I'm specific." Specific is oxygen. "Tell me." I told her about the audit trail. The consent signature with the wrong R. The proxy printout that finally explained how a family access could brush the donor status field in a linked workflow supposed to be view and message only. Never change a flag. I said the 7 words out loud, not biologically related at all, and the syllables felt stranger in the air than they had on paper. "How does it hurt?" she asked. "Like taking off a shoe that never fit." I said. "Relief with ache stitched to it." "That's grief," she said softly. "And it's a start." "What's next?" Patient advocate looped in. "Ethics case open. I want to state it to Celeste with a witness. I'm not your donor." Not an argument. A sentence. "Do it with Ray in the room," she said. "Text me before you go in. If you don't ping me in an hour." I drive over and embarrass security with my persistence. I smiled for the first time that day. Deal. Back inside. I met Ray in the cafe. He wore a tie with tiny sailboats. The kind of detail that made him feel like a human being in a building of roles. I slid the folder across. He paged through quietly. Then said, "We'll file compliance and ethics reports today. I'll place a coordination note in your chart. All transplant-related communications must go through me or Allison. No one will route you to pre-op. Full stop." He produced a form. "If you want metadata on the digital signature and the session that toggled the donor flag, write it here." I wrote carefully. Each letter neat. As if legibility could make me more real. We took the elevator to Celeste's floor. I texted Nisha, going in with Ray. She replied with a sword emoji and, "Proud of you." Celeste's room smelled like hand soap and lemon wipes. She looked up from her phone as we entered. Face composed the way she'd learned for events. human, but stage ready. Backup, she said, glancing at Ray. Clarity. I said, he's here, so neither of us edits the conversation afterward. All right, she said. Say it. I'm not a candidate. I said. The registry told me March 11. The hospital confirmed today. The audit shows a proxy change that said I hadn't tested, which was false. A consent form listing. My name was entered August 7 with a signature that isn't mine. Metadata requests are filed. The relatedness panel that the hospital runs in family-linked workups when a recipient and potential living donor are processed side by side was repeated today and indicates we're not biologically related. She listened. For a moment, I saw the 7-year-old who had once whispered, "Pretend we're spies," during a blackout. Then the moment passed. People still find ways. She said. Paired donations. Chains. If you cooperated. Those systems begin with voluntary consent. Ray said gently. Consent isn't a checkbox family fills on someone else's behalf. She flinched at his tone more than his words. I'm not your enemy. She said to me. I'm sick. I know. I said. Two truths can sit next to each other without canceling. You are sick. And I am not your property. Property is dramatic. She said. Almost reflex. It's accurate when my name is forged. I said. When my test is erased by a toggle. When my phone is shattered to stop me from taking photos of my own file. Silence pooled. Machines clicked through their quiet rhythms. A laugh. Too loud. Leaked from the hall and was shushed by a door. Do you want me to die? Celeste asked finally. Not a stone throw, but a small. Terrible question set on the table between us. No. I said. I want you to live. I want me to live. Too. Those wants are not opposites. Her eyes shone, but didn't spill. She looked at the TV closed captioning, scrolling on a cooking show plate by plate, and then back at me. Okay. She said. The word was different now. Then do what you need. I'll figure something out. Ray cleared his throat. I'll connect the team to the transplant social worker. He offered. There are resources when a living donor isn't available. Thank you. She said to him. Not to me. The sting arrived and left. Like a wave that no longer reaches as far up the shore as it used to. We stepped into the hall. Ray touched my elbow in the way professionals do when they mean. You handled that cleanly. You spoke in facts. He said. Keep doing that. By late afternoon, the ethics office emailed KC 5247 opened. I forwarded it to myself, Maine. Backup. On the old high school account, I keep like a fireproof box. A small insurance against the way doors can close around facts in certain houses. At 6:03 p.m. Nisha showed up with takeout and a yellow legal pad. Evidence wall. She announced. Practical as always. We spread papers across my kitchen table, audit log. Consent scan. Screenshots. Registry. Email with header. Plane ticket to Portland. The cracked mug photo, 3:49 p.m. The proxy permissions printout with roles spelled out mother view. Message. Request scheduling. Father view. Liaison internal. She drew lines with a highlighter. Labeled nodes with dates. It looked like a detective show, without a culprit, just a narrative we were finally putting under lights. Now, she said. Boundaries in writing. Email your parents. No calls. I drafted. Subject medical decisions and communication boundaries. Marianne and Douglas. Effective immediately. All transplant divided by consent discussions must go through Allison, last name. Transplant coordinator. And Ray, last name. Patient advocate. I will not discuss medical decisions by phone or text. The registry confirmed on March 11 that I am not a compatible donor. Any further attempts to alter records, misrepresent consent, or pressure me will be documented and forwarded to compliance in the ethics office. Lena. Before I hit send, a local news alert popped up, Ward family to hold press briefing tomorrow. 1000 a.m. St. Jude Pavilion. A photo of Marianne at a gala loaded beneath. Nisha leaned over, spotted the headline, and let out a low whistle. They're going to launder the narrative, she said. Get ahead of the audit. Branded as courage. They'll say, anonymous donor. I said. Certain. Clean. Painless. Avoid where my name would have been. Nisha looked at me. Are you going to let them write you out? I'm going to show up. I said. Not to shout. To correct. 2 minutes. 4 sentences. No adjectives. We rehearse not lines, but rails. My name is Lena Ward. I was tested March 6. The registry emailed me March 11. I'm not biologically related. Consent was falsified. Proxy access was misused. When I stumbled into anger, Nisha would tap the table and say, Shorta. Cleaner. Make it so simple a closed captioner can keep up without guessing. At 9:28 p.m., Douglas replied to my boundary email. Your tone is unnecessary. We'll discuss as a family in the morning. I did not reply. At 9:41, Marianne wrote, your cruelty is staggering. You will not sabotage your sister's chance. I closed the laptop. The messages could clatter in the dark without me. I packed the manila folder copies of the registry email, the lab summary with ABO and markers, the audit trail print showing the September 2 toggle from proxy context, the proxy roles page, the consent scan with my own R beside the forged one, and the incident report number from the lobby when my phone was smashed. Portable charger. Notebook. 2 pens. Water. Nisha insists on practicalities during storms. Before sleep, I stood at the sink and watched the apartment settle. Upstairs, the neighbor hit the same 2 chords installed. As always. Before the third, I remembered being 9 and hearing be grateful we didn't have to take you in, and deciding gratitude was a safety vest I had to wear even on dry land. I remembered the moment today when 7 plain words reset the horizon line in my head. Not biologically related at all. Truth doesn't love you back. I thought. It doesn't have to. It just stands there. You move. Sometime after midnight, my phone buzzed a calendar. Reminder I'd forgotten to delete consent app Lena. 3:30 m. The yellow block my mother had sent. I pressed and held until the menu appeared and tapped delete event. The box disappeared. No confetti. No music. Still. The silence that followed felt like a room you could live in. Morning would bring microphones and the temptation of theater. I repeated my rails out loud so they'd sit in my mouth properly when it mattered. My name is Lena Ward. I was tested March 6th. The registry emailed me March 11th. I am not biologically related. Consent was falsified. Proxy access was misused. Then I turned off the light and lay very still, listening to my breath count itself into the kind of sleep you earn by choosing to be precise. The St. Probix. Jude Pavilion looked like a brochure glass pretending to be air. Banners that spelled hope in a font meant to soothe. By 9:40, tripods had sprouted like thin-legged cranes. Cables taping down the paths people were supposed to take. A producer in a navy blazer ran sound checks. 1, 2, 1, 2, while his colleague adjusted a badge lanyard with a bright mustard stain near the clip. I kept catching on that stain. The way small, ordinary details steady you when the big thing tries to pull you under. Nisha walked beside me. Posture easy. Voice low. Rails. She reminded me. No adjectives. 2 minutes. We don't chase, we correct. The manila folder tugged at my shoulder registry, email, lab summary with ABO and marker mismatch. Audit trail, showing the September 2 toggle from proxy context. Proxy role. Page. The consent scan with the wrong R. And the lobby incident number from yesterday, when my phone hit tile and turned to glitter. I dressed like a student delivering flyers, dark jeans, Clean sneakers. Jacket 1. Notch nicer than usual. Strategy don't look like the story. At 9:57 a.m., the hospital spokesperson stepped onto a small riser beneath a banner. "Thank you for being here," she said, smoothing a page. "Brief remarks today." She introduced the Ward family, and the crowd pivoted like it was on a hinge. Mariana went first. A pale suit the color of early light. She wore tired the way some people wear pearls deliberately. Douglas followed, hand to her elbow. The blue anchor pattern tie he saves for show-steady days. Celeste last, walking carefully, a soft flush on her cheeks, hair in a neat twist. Seeing her face a face I didn't match, but still knew, brought the old split-screen love braided with hurt. Past laid over present like tracing paper. The spokesperson yielded the mic. Marianne began with a voice polished to carry. "We are humbled by the outpouring of support," she said. "This season has been unimaginably difficult. But through grace and community, there is hope." She paused at hope. Cameras clicked. Nisha's hand found my sleeve. One quick press. "I'm here. We want to thank." Marianne continued. "Someone who made a decision of extraordinary generosity." An anonymous donor came forward. There it was, clean as a trimmed hedge. And because of their selfless choice, Celeste's path looks brighter today. Anonymous donor. A phrase that erases as it seems to honor. I watched reporters' pens move. Heads tilted into that sympathetic angle people adopt when they want the simplest version to be true. Nisha whispered, "On your quay." Marianne pivoted to gratitude for the hospital, the community, the nameless hero. I stepped forward. A security guard shifted to intercept. I stopped just short of him, lifted the folder slightly, and said, calm as ordering coffee, "I have a brief statement as the person being omitted." He looked to the spokesperson, who looked to Douglas. Families like mine run on hand signals. Douglas offered the smallest shake of his head. The guard didn't block, didn't wave me through. He left a sliver of space. Sometimes that's all you get. I moved to the side mic. Not center. The red tally light was on. A current traveled the crowd, the room inhaling for something unscripted. "My name is Lena Ward," I said. "You haven't heard that name today. But it matters." Heads turned. The mustard-stained producer tapped her cameraman's shoulder roll. Marianne's eyes went wide and sharp at once, the expression, that means, "How dare you?" In a dialect I speak fluently. Celeste looked down, then back at me. Something unreadable flickered: fear, anger, calculation. Maybe all three. I was tested as a potential living donor on March 6th. I continued. The National Donor Registry emailed me on March 11th at 9:14 a.m. to state I am not a match. I provided that email and my lab summary to the hospital yesterday. I held up a copy, date clear, header visible. No emotion for anyone to argue with. A reporter called. "Are you saying the donor wasn't you?" "I'm saying key facts are being omitted," I said. "Specifically, I'm not a compatible donor. And documented attempts were made in the hospital system to present me as untested and to attach my name to a consent form I did not sign." I slid the audit page from the folder, a grid of dates and users as boring as truth. On September 2nd at 11:31 a.m., a box, "Potential living donor has not yet been tested," was toggled to true from the recipient care workspace using proxy access assigned to my mother. In August, to a consent form listing, my name was entered with a signature that does not match mine. Metadata requests are pending. I placed 3 labeled copies on the media table. Facts build rooms you can stand in. Mariana stepped forward, voice tightening into her client management register. "This is a private family matter," she said. "Shame on you for turning it into a spectacle." "You scheduled a press conference," I said, not raising my voice. The microphones did the carrying. Another reporter asked, "Can you confirm your relationship to the patient?" Her tone had shifted to the angle that gets clicked. Based on lab markers and a relatedness, check the hospital runs when a recipient and a potential living donor are evaluated side by side. I said, Celeste Ward and I are not biologically related. I didn't look at Celeste when I said it. I watched the middle distance where truths sit when they're too heavy to hold eye to eye. The collective inhale was almost physical. Someone whispered, "Oh wow." The security guard straightened by an inch. Sensing how crowds can tip from curious to hungry, Douglas tried on his paternal tone. "Enough," he said. "Palm out for order. Our family believes love, not blood. The finest us." In another story, that would land. In this one, it sounded like a slogan carved over a locked door. I would have agreed. I said evenly, if love had been present. What defined us was utility. The spokesperson returned to the mic with a professional smile pulled too tight. "We're concluding this briefing," she announced. "Further questions to the hospital communications office." Reporters pressed anyway. "When did you find out? Is there an investigation? Who forged the signature?" The last question hung heavier than the others. A weight tied to a string. No one wanted to pull in public. I didn't chase it. I wasn't here to litigate on the pavement. I was here to plant a stake where my life begins and theirs ends. I set down the remaining folders tabs labeled dates, audit, consent, so there'd be no confusion when someone circled back later to pretend nothing had been said. Lena Marianne snapped, the polish cracking. "You don't get to sabotage your sister because you're bitter." The last word clattered like a utensil that didn't break but ruined the quiet. Which part did I sabotage, I asked. The part where facts replace a script, or the part where I refuse to be a body in a story that doesn't name me unless it needs something? Stillness again. The kind that makes the air feel heavier. These are not lines that trend. They don't tuck into tidy lower thirds. But stillness is the friend of clarity. Nisha touched my elbow. "We're done," she said. Low. "You said the sentences." She was right. My goal wasn't to stand there until they ran out of angles. It was to ensure that, when they told themselves this day later in a room full of nods, the dates and the audit and the calm voice at the side mic would snag. We stepped back. The security guard made a human corridor through cables and knees. As we passed the first row, a young reporter met my eyes and murmured, "Thanks for the timestamps." Like we were co-conspirators in respecting reality. In the hallway beyond the pavilion, the noise went soft, like weather behind glass. My hands began to shake. Delayed biology, catching up to event. Nisha handed me water. "In for 4. Out for 6. She said. I did as told. My phone vibrated almost off the folder notification stacking. Unknown numbers. Former classmates. Channel 4 just ran it. Is this real? I'm sorry I never noticed. Then Allison's name. I answered. Compliance has escalated. She said. Voice measured. The hospital is limiting comment to verified facts. Also, security logged a fainting episode after media questions. Your mother is in observation for stress. Do you need an escort to your car? I'm okay, I said. The words had fewer edges with her. Thank you for keeping this on rails. Clarity protects you, she said. We'll be in touch this afternoon. Nisha lifted an eyebrow. Ready for aftershocks, I nodded. You don't get to choreograph other people's reactions. You draw your line and you hold it. We took the service corridor out, where the smell shifts from floral lobby to floor wax and coffee from a break room. A maintenance cart rattled by. Its radio, humming the tail end of a song. I memorized the ordinariness, the flicker of a fluorescent bulb. Tape on the floor for gurney parking. Big moments always surprise me by happening next to small ones. At the side door, Nisha squeezed my hand. Home. Regroup. You don't have to watch the coverage. We'll know the narrative by the subject lines. I smiled. Brief. I'll catalog them, I said, because lists give me back my breath. Just before the door swung open, I looked down the long corridor, toward the echo of microphones and polished sentences that would keep vibrating after we left. I thought about what I'd said: name, dates, audit, and how none of it was poetic. None of it cinematic. It was simply exact. For years, I begged truth to love me back. Today, I didn't ask it for anything. I stood next to it and spoke. Outside, the sun cleared a cloud, and the day looked ordinary again. Another story would take our slot in the feed within an hour. But certain sentences, once said into a live mic, don't go back in the box. They sit in rooms after you leave and remind the furniture to be honest. Ready? Nisha asked. Ready? I said. We stepped into the noon air. To the folder, a weight and a promise against my ribs. That my mouth already rehearsing. The only line I planned to keep no matter how the angle shifted. My name is Lena Ward. By late afternoon, the clip had already slipped into the bloodstream of the internet and begun to clone itself. The moment I said my name, the red tally light burning steady. The line not biologically related at all looped. Captioned. Cut into split screens with gala photos. I didn't watch. Nisha put my phone face down on the table like a hot pan and opened her laptop only to check emails from Allison and the ethics office. Still, the story seeped in through other vents, the neighbor knocking with a cautious, "You okay?" The barista downstairs sliding me a cup and saying, "On the house." An intern from the office texting, "Proud of you," with a screenshot of a trending tag. At 3:12 p.m., Allison called. 2 updates. She said. Voice. All rails. First, we issued a statement confirming a review of consent irregularities. Factual only. Second, security logged a fainting episode after the briefing. Your mother's in observation for stress. Do you need a staff escort if you return to the hospital? I'm not coming back today. I said. Thank you for keeping this precise. Clarity protects you. She repeated. Our small benediction. Compliance is moving quickly. When I hung up, I stared at my hands. They looked like anyone's ink smudge on the left index from all the notes. A tiny glue scar on the thumb from a school art project. They shook a little. A delayed biology catching up now that I was off stage. Nisha nudged the water glass toward me. Gentle as a nurse. In for 4. Out for 6. She said. I breathed until my ribs remembered how not to brace. The building buzzer went at 4:05 p.m. 3 quick press. My mother's pattern. I didn't move. It went again. A text from an unknown number followed. Come downstairs and face your family. Then, or I'll come up. Nisha was already dialing. Ray. This is Nisha. With Lena. There's someone at her building, implying they'll enter. Can you loop campus security and log it to the case? She listened. Nodded. Yes. We'll document. The messages kept coming, tiny variations on the same accusation. The same order. We took screenshots. Wrote down times. Documentation as ballast. At 4:23 p.m. Ray emailed an interim safety plan, numbers for campus patrol, a template for a restraining order, and a sentence that let my shoulders drop an inch. We can arrange an escort for any future hospital visits. You do not have to be alone in our facility. File it. Nisha said. Tapping the restraining order template. My finger hovered over the trackpad. The word felt heavy and grown. Then I attached the screenshots. Referenced the *** lobby incident report from this morning. ***, where my phone shattered against tile. And hit send. You can regret pressure, you can't regret paper. By dinner time, the morning had edited itself for television. One station ran a split-screen Marianne at the podium on one side. Me at the side mic on the other. The lower third reading audit trail raises questions. Another brought in a medical ethicist to define consent in tidy terms. Anchors used words like troubling and complex. The coverage would drift by tomorrow, replaced by something shinier. But some sentences stick to a room after you leave. That was enough. A different kind of message slipped through the flood in email with a scanned handwritten note. Subject line. From Yuma, Arizona. The script leaned right. Letters catching like they were bracing each other. I'm adopted. 2. Nobody told me until last year. Watching you say your name. Watching you choose what to do with your own body. I felt something I didn't know I was allowed to feel. Choice. Thank you. I printed it and taped it to the fridge. Not because I needed a stranger's permission to justify what I'd done, but because it reminded me of a rule I wanted to live by now. I will no longer explain myself to people who make me small. I might answer questions. I might show proof. I won't beg to be believed inside rooms that rely on my doubt to function. Night fell with the kind of tired that comes from accuracy more than exertion. Nisha dozed on the couch, shoes still on, one hand resting on the edge of the folder as if she could guard it in her sleep. I took that folder into my bedroom and set it on the chair where laundry usually lands, then lay on top of the covers and stared at the ceiling until the texture turned into constellations. Somewhere past midnight, I dreamed I was scooping receipts from a river, the paper dissolving as I touched it. I woke with my heart too fast and said into the dark, "You have copies. You wrote the dates. You are not drowning." My voice sounded like a flashlight beam narrow. Enough. Morning brought numbers and railwords. My supervisor called to grant me a week off. New questions. The ethics office CC'd me on a memo, phrases like substantiated, policy violation, referred to state board. A small nonprofit that supports living donors offered counseling. I said yes. Not because I couldn't stand up straight, but because saying yes to help felt like inviting competence into the room. Marianne's name flashed twice, then vanished. Douglas sent a single email. "You have harmed this family beyond repair." I filed it in a folder labeled "Statements that prove my point." At noon, Celeste texted "Discharged later today. Donor, still anonymous. Please don't show up." It read like a posted notice, "Keep moving." Nothing to see here. In a different draft of my life, I might have gone anyway. Hungry for a movie moment, on a curb with last-minute tears. In this draft, he tipped, "I won't come." I meant what I said. I'm not here to fight. I'm done standing in rooms where I'm only useful as a body. 3 dots blinked. Vanished. Returned. Then nothing. By mid-afternoon, I walked to the courthouse with Nisha and filed the restraining order petition. The clerk had a mug with a cat and glasses painted on it. "Any supporting documents?" she asked. Flipping to the attachment index, I slid the packet across screenshots with timestamps. The campus security note. The *** hospital lobby incident number. *** from the morning before the consultation. My boundary email. "Plenty," she said, stamping with satisfying authority. Paper has a sound when it belongs to you. On the courthouse steps, a teenager in a school hoodie held the door and said, without making it awkward, "I saw you on TV. You were calm." Not a question. I thanked him and wondered how many kids learn to track adults for clues on how one gets heard. Back home, the apartment felt like it had exhaled while we were gone. The folder on the table had changed temperature in my mind from armor to archive. Nisha made tea the way she does when days try to convince you they're too big. Warm the mug on a plate. Slice the lemon thin as paper. Pinch of salt in the hot water because her grandmother swears it steadies the heart. We sat on the floor, backs to the couch. "So," she said, "what does not explaining yourself look like in practice?" "Unfollow." I joked, then answered for real. "Leave the family group chat that only pings when they need a ride or a favor. Block any number that messages only in commands. Decline the next gala out of habit. Build days that don't pivot around someone else's mood." She clinked her mug against mine. To non-pivoting lives. The days that followed didn't get cinematic. No grand apology. No courtroom scene. No montage with a string section. Just small rearrangements that kept holding. The hospital completed its review and referred the forged consent to an external investigator. The transplant program added an extra verification step for family proxies and linked donor-recipient workspaces, a line of code that felt like a door getting checked twice before sleep. Mirage accounts DM'd. I deleted without opening. A reporter asked for an interview. I replied with one sentence. Everything I needed to say is already on the record. We learned a few days later, in a short article on page 2, that the organ that helped Celeste had come from a deceased donor, part of a chain triggered by an accident in a neighboring county. Another family's worst day had braided into our complicated one. I sat with that quietly, aware that so much of life hinges on strangers we never meet. On Thursday, a week from the lobby and 6 days from the pavilion, I met Ray by the information desk to sign one last document. He shook my hand, mustache twitching toward a smile. His job doesn't always allow Dade. You drew a clean line, he said. In the corner, the volunteer's paperback cart wore the same little sign, take one, leave one. I didn't take a book. I left a version of myself there instead, the one who thought the next perfect act would finally translate into belonging. On my way out, I passed the media table. The folders I'd left at the briefing were gone. In their place, a stack of pamphlets titled Understanding Consent. A small placard read, "Please take one." I didn't need the pamphlet. I already understood. But seeing it there, a quiet policy ripple in a building that prefers quiet, felt like proof that reality can move, even if no one claps. At home that evening, I opened the fridge to look at the Yuma note again. Choice. The word looked plain in that script. Sturdy. The kind of word you build with rather than brandish. It didn't ask to be admired. It asked to be used. I sent one final email to Allison, to Ray, to the ethics alias. Thank you for respecting facts and boundaries. Please close my file when appropriate. For the first time in weeks, the send button felt light under my thumb. Before bed, I stepped onto my small balcony. The city had found that between hours hush where it listens to itself. Across the way, someone laughed and then hushed themselves, which made me smile. I breathed in for 4, out for 6. The way Nisha taught me. Then I said the sentence into the dark. Not for microphones. Not for anyone else. Just to practice living inside it. My name is Lena Ward. I said. You didn't hear that name for a long time where I grew up. But it matters. The line didn't need a red tally light. It didn't need cameras. It hung in the air and then settled back into me. A weight I was finally willing to carry because it was mine. I don't want revenge. I want distance that holds. I want a life that fits. And maybe, now, I have the beginnings of one: a kitchen where papers mean what they say, a phone that doesn't buzz with orders, a buzzer at the front door that answers only to people I invite. Some families collapse under their lies. Mine performed theirs until the set fell during matinee. I stepped off the stage and into a corridor that smelled like floor wax and coffee and something else I can finally name: a future. Enough. Story 2. Hey. I'm Amanda. I'm 24 now. And honestly, I didn't think that Friday would be anything special. Just another typical day running my business, handling decisions, and heading back to my quiet, empty apartment. Peaceful. Sure. But lonely, sometimes. Growing up, I was always kind of invisible. My parents never really tried to hide the fact that my little sister, Olivia, she's 8 years younger than me, was their clear favorite. By the time I left for college, things between me and my parents were already strained. And after that, whatever relationship we had just faded away, they poured all their attention into Olivia. While I worked hard to build my own life from scratch, I haven't been to their house in years. The last major thing we shared was my wedding, and even that felt more like an obligation for them. They showed up for a short while with Olivia, threw in some backhanded comments about my plain dress, gave a couple half-hearted toasts, and left before the cake was even cut. When I got divorced 2 years ago, at 32, they called only to express their disappointment in me. That pretty much sums up our relationship: distant and cold. That Friday started like any other. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my phone rang. I usually ignore personal calls during work hours, but seeing my sister's name on the screen made me curious. We hadn't spoken in months. Hello, Olivia, I answered, keeping my voice neutral. Amanda, she said, her voice dripping with the superiority I'd grown accustomed to. I'm having a party this Friday at Mom and Dad's. I got promoted at work. Congratulations. I said sincerely. Despite our issues. I didn't wish her ill. Yeah. So anyway, she continued dismissively. I'm inviting you. You can come if you want. If you're not bothered by the fact that your little sister is more successful than you. I almost snorted at the irony, but managed to keep my composure. If only she knew that I ran a multi-million-dollar company with over 100 employees. I'll definitely come. I replied calmly. Really? She sounded surprised. Well, it starts at 7. Don't be late. After hanging up, I couldn't help but laugh. The audacity of my sister never ceased to amaze me. Around 4 that afternoon, I decided to call it a day. James, I called to my assistant as he passed my office door. I'm heading out early today. My sister's having some kind of promotion party. James smiled. That works out well. I'm leaving early too. My fiancée is having a party tonight at home. I took my time getting ready. I chose a simple but elegant black dress. Nothing flashy, but definitely expensive to the trained eye. My apartment reflected my success. Spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture and original artwork, none of which my family had ever seen. Driving to my parents' suburban home felt like traveling back in time. The house was smaller than I remembered, but otherwise unchanged. I parked behind a row of cars and took a deep breath before walking to the door. My mother opened it, her expression barely changing at the sight of me. Amanda, you came. I said I would. I replied. She looked me up and down. Try to be happy for your sister tonight. Okay, don't spoil this by being envious. Olivia is celebrating a promotion. She has a fiancé and, well, you know your situation. I bit my tongue to stop myself from laughing. I'll behave. Mom, I promise not to envy her too much. My father gave me an equally lukewarm greeting, merely nodding in my direction before returning to his conversation with relatives. I barely recognized. The house was filled with family, friends, and relatives, all chatting excitedly. I grabbed a glass of wine and found a quiet corner to observe. Most of these people hadn't seen me in years, and few made an effort to speak with me. The crowd suddenly hushed as Olivia made her grand entrance, descending the stairs in a sparkly gold dress that caught every light in the room. She beamed as everyone applauded. Thank you all for coming, she announced, her voice carrying across the room. I'm so thrilled to share this special moment with you. After all my hard work, I've finally been promoted to senior account manager. My parents were practically glowing with pride as Olivia worked the room, telling anyone who would listen about her accomplishments. The company director even has coffee with me several times a month. I overheard her telling her aunt. He says, I'm on the fast track to executive level. I maintained a polite smile, sipping my wine slowly. Eventually, Olivia made her way to me, her smile turning slightly predatory. I honestly didn't think you'd come, she said, looking me up and down. I invited you to be polite, not to show off what a successful person can achieve. She gestured to herself with a flourish. I raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, emboldened by my silence. She raised her voice. You know what? Amanda, maybe it's better if you just leave. I want to be surrounded by successful people tonight, not losers like you. The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward us from the corner of my eye. I saw my parents smirking, apparently amused by Olivia's cruelty. Instead of being embarrassed, I smiled calmly. I think I'll stay a little longer. Don't worry. My failure isn't contagious. You and your successful friends are safe. Olivia's face flushed with anger. But before she could respond, the front door opened. A familiar figure stepped in, and Olivia's expression instantly transformed. She rushed over to her arms around him and kissed him. Everyone, she announced. This is my fiancé, James. I froze my glass halfway to my lips. My assistant, James. Suddenly, his comment about his fiancé's party made perfect sense. Olivia dragged James through the crowd, clearly eager to show him off. "You have to meet my sister," she said loudly, pulling him toward me. When James saw me, his eyes widened in shock. "Hi, boss," he said automatically. "Hello, James," I replied warmly. There was a moment of complete silence as everyone processed what had just happened. "Boss." Olivia's voice had risen an octave. "What do you mean?" Boss James looked confused. "Your sister is the CEO of Reynolds Marketing. I'm her executive assistant." The silence in the room deepened. My parents stood frozen, mouth slightly open. Olivia's face went through a remarkable transformation. First blushing, then turning pale, then flashing red again. I finished my wine and set the glass down carefully. "Thank you for the invitation." "Olivia, I should go now. I wouldn't want to spoil your party with my unsuccessful presence." My parents suddenly found their voices. "Amanda." "Wait. You misunderstood." My father started, but I was already walking toward the door, smiling to myself as the whispers erupted behind me, back in my apartment. I kicked off my heels and laughed until my sides hurt. The look on Olivia's face when James called me boss was priceless. I made myself a mug of hot chocolate, turned off my phone, and settled into bed with a book, still chuckling about the evening's events. When I woke up the next morning and turned my phone back on, it immediately buzzed with notifications and 15 missed calls from my parents, 23 from Olivia, a dozen text messages, all variations of "call me immediately" and "we need to talk." I ignored them all and went about my Saturday as planned: yoga class, grocery shopping, and catching up on industry reports. I wasn't avoiding them exactly, but I wasn't in a rush to hear their sudden change of heart. Now that they knew I was successful, around noon on Sunday, my phone rang again. "Olivia." I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello," I answered. "Amanda," Olivia said, her voice unnaturally polite. "Can we meet? I'd like to talk to you." I raised an eyebrow at her tone. "Sure. Coffee shop near my place in an hour." "Perfect." She agreed quickly. "Text me the address." The coffee shop was quiet for a Sunday afternoon. I arrived early, ordered a latte, and watched Olivia enter. 15 minutes later, she looked around nervously before spotting me. Gone was the sparkly dress and arrogance, replaced by jeans and an almost timid demeanor. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. I wanted to apologize for what I said at the party. It was rude and well. "I didn't know about your job." The apology sounded rehearsed, her eyes not quite meeting mine. But I could tell she wasn't sorry for what she said. She was sorry. She'd been wrong about me. "What do you really want?" I asked directly. Olivia dropped the act immediately. "Fine. Now that I know you're loaded, I want you to help pay for my wedding. It's going to be expensive. And James's salary." She trailed off with a dismissive wave. I nearly choked on my coffee. "You're joking, right?" "Why would I joke? You're my sister and you're rich. Family helps." "Family. Family," I repeated incredulously. "For years. You and our parents have barely acknowledged my existence. Now that you know I'm successful, suddenly you want my help." "No. Olivia, I will not be paying for your wedding." Her face hardened. "Then don't expect an invitation." I couldn't help but laugh. Somehow, I'll survive the disappointment. She stood up so quickly. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You're selfish, Amanda. You always have been. Goodbye, Olivia," I said calmly as she stormed out. I wasn't surprised when, 30 minutes later, a text from my mother appeared. "Amanda, you're being selfish. Your sister deserves a beautiful wedding. Why can't you help her? We're your family." I put my phone away without responding. If anything, this confirmed what I already knew. They weren't interested in reconnecting with me. They were interested in my money. Monday morning, I arrived at work earlier than usual, hoping to get a head start on the week. James was already there, looking uncomfortable. Amanda. He began as soon as I walked in. I'm so sorry about Friday night. I had no idea Olivia was your sister until I saw you there. I waved away his apology. You have nothing to be sorry for. James. Let's just start the day. Shall we? Your relationship with my sister has nothing to do with our professional one. We fell back into our usual routine, reviewing the week schedule and prioritizing tasks. I was grateful for James's professionalism. He was an excellent assistant. Regardless of his poor taste in finances, a few uneventful days passed. I thought perhaps my sister had gotten the message. But I should have known better. Thursday afternoon, while I was in the middle of a conference call, the receptionist buzzed me. Miss Reynolds, there's an Olivia Carter here insisting on seeing you. She says she's your sister. Isayed, tell her I'm in a meeting. I did. She says she'll wait. After finishing my call, I stepped out to find Olivia lounging in the reception area, examining her nails. She jumped up when she saw me. Finally, your receptionist wouldn't let me through. She complained because I was in a meeting. What are you doing here? Olivia. She shrugged. I came to see James. I missed him. The smile she gave me was clearly fake. Can we talk in your office? Against my better judgment, I led her to my office as soon as the door closed. Her demeanor changed completely. 120. 000. She said without preamble. Excuse me. That's all I need for the wedding. It's not even that much for someone like you. I stared at her, astounded by her audacity. The answer is still no. Olivia, why are you being so difficult? Her voice rose. You have the money. You're just being selfish and greedy. I think you should leave. I said firmly. Not until you agree to help me. She shouted, her face reddening. What kind of sister are you? The door opened, and James stood there, his expression mortified. Olivia. What are you doing? Olivia spun around to face James, her expression quickly shifting from anger to something resembling sweetness. James. I was just talking to my sister about our wedding. Tell Amanda to help us with the ceremony. I remained silent, letting James handle the situation. Olivia, he said gently. We've talked about this. We can afford a modest wedding ourselves. Her face contorted with fury. Modest. I don't want modest. I want what I deserve. A spectacular wedding that everyone will talk about for years. Why should we settle when my sister is sitting on piles of money? That's enough. James said firmly, taking her arm. We should go. No. She yanked her arm away. Not until she agrees. She turned back to me. You owe me this. Amanda. After all, those years of being the perfect daughter while you ran off to college. Perfect daughter. I couldn't help but laugh. Is that what you think happened? I left for college because our parents made it clear I wasn't the favorite. You were always going to be their precious baby. No matter what. That's not true. Olivia shouted. You were always jealous of me. James took a more forceful approach, now practically steering Olivia toward the door. We're leaving now. She resisted, but was no match for James' determined grip as he escorted her out. I could hear her voice echoing down the hallway, still making demands and threats. I sat back in my chair, massaging my temples. A few minutes later, James returned, his face flushed with embarrassment. I am so sorry about that, he said. I had no idea she would behave this way. It's not your fault, I assured him. I don't understand it. He continued. She's not usually like this. I raised an eyebrow, but said nothing in my experience. Olivia had always been exactly like this. I'll talk to her, James promised. Make her understand that this behavior is unacceptable. I think it's best if she doesn't come to the office again. I said carefully. I'll have security add her to the restricted list. James nodded resignedly. I understand. I'm sorry it's come to this. The next day, the barrage began. Text messages from Olivia calling me selfish, heartless and greedy. Voicemails from my mother, demanding to know why I was tormenting my sister. Even my father called his message gruff and uncomfortable, saying I should do the right thing for family. I ignored them all. 34 years of experience had taught me that engaging only made things worse. By Sunday, I blocked all their numbers, removed them from my social media accounts, and instructed my email server to filter their messages directly to trash for a few days. Things were quiet. I focused on work, had dinner with friends, and even went on a date that, while pleasant, didn't lead to anything. I was beginning to think the storm had passed. Then Tuesday morning, as I pulled into my reserved parking space at work, Olivia darted out from between cars. "You think you can just block me, and I'll go away?" she shouted as I stepped out of my car. "You're not getting rid of me that easily." I looked around, noticing several employees watching the scene unfold. "Olivia, this is not the place." "Oh, I think it's exactly the place." Her voice echoed across the parking garage. "Everyone should know what kind of person you really are. You're in love with my fiancé, aren't you? That's why you want help with the wedding. You're trying to sabotage my relationship." I was so stunned by the accusation that I couldn't immediately respond. In the silence, Olivia seemed to grow more confident. "I've seen how you look at him. You're just jealous because I have someone, and you're alone. You want him for yourself, Miss Reynolds. Is everything all right?" Two security guards approached cautiously. "No, everything is not all right," Olivia answered. Before I could, "This woman is trying to steal my fiancé. Please escort my sister off the property," I said to the guards, finding my voice at last. "She's not authorized to be here. You can't do this," Olivia screamed as the guards gently but firmly guided her toward the exit. "You can't just throw me out. I'm family." I walked into the building, aware of the whispers and stares. By the time I reached my office, James was already waiting, his face ashen. "I just heard what happened," he said. "Amanda, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," I replied, setting down my bag. "But you do need to figure out this situation with Olivia. I can't have her showing up at my workplace making scenes." I know. He ran a hand through his hair. "She's been different lately. Ever since she found out about your position, it's like she's obsessed with your money and accusing me of being in love with you." "Where did that come from?" James looked genuinely confused. "I have no idea. I've never given her any reason to think there's anything but a professional relationship between us." "Well, handle it," I said firmly. "I don't want to have to get a restraining order against my own sister." He nodded and left looking troubled. I spent the morning trying to focus on work, but my mind kept returning to Olivia's bizarre accusation. Was she just trying to hurt me? Or did she genuinely believe I had designs on James? The thought was so absurd I would have laughed if the situation wasn't so serious. That evening, I took additional precautions. I blocked my family's numbers on my home phone, added extra security measures to my apartment building, and even changed my routine for a few days, just in case Olivia decided to ambush me again. A week passed with no incidents. Then two. By the third week, I was beginning to relax, thinking perhaps James had gotten through to Olivia after all. 1 month after the parking lot incident, James knocked on my office door just as I was wrapping up for the day. "Got a minute?" he asked, his expression serious but calmer than it had been in weeks. "I wanted to let you know that I broke up with Olivia." I tried to hide my surprise. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be." He shook his head. "I should have done it sooner. After that scene she made here, things just got worse. She demanded I quit my job because she didn't want me working with you. She kept accusing me of having an affair with you when I refused to quit. She started checking my phone, showing up at my apartment, unannounced." He trailed off, looking exhausted. I nodded, unsure what to say. James was a good guy who'd gotten caught in the crossfire of a dysfunctional family situation. "Anyway," he continued, "I just wanted you to know. I hope this means the disruptions to the office are over." "I hope so too," I said sincerely. "And James, take some time if you need it. You've been through a lot." He gave me a small smile. "Thanks. but I'd rather stay busy. Work is a good distraction right now. Life settled back into a comfortable rhythm after that. Without the constant threat of Olivia appearing or my phone buzzing with angry messages, I found myself more relaxed than I'd been in months. I briefly wondered if my parents would reach out, perhaps to apologize or at least acknowledge the situation, but they remained silent. It confirmed what I'd always suspected. Their interest in reconnecting was solely based on what they thought they could get from me. With Olivia no longer engaged to my assistant and the prospect of a lavish wedding fading, they had no use for me. Strangely, I felt more at peace with that knowledge than I ever had before. For years, I'd carried a quiet hope that someday they might see me. Really see me. And regret the relationship we'd never had. Now I accepted that it would never happen. And that acceptance was freeing. Spring turned to summer and work kept me busy with new clients and expanding projects. James continued to be an exceptional assistant, never bringing up personal matters during work hours. Occasionally, we'd grab lunch together, and he seemed to be healing from the breakup, focusing on his career and reconnecting with friends. One Wednesday in late July, James came into my office with his usual stack of mail and messages. But he was practically bouncing with excitement. "Everything okay?" I asked, amused by his barely contained energy. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something personal," he said. "I've been seeing someone for a few months now. Her name is Claire. She's an architect and, well, we're getting married." "James, that's wonderful news," I said, genuinely happy for him. "Congratulations." He beamed. "Thank you. We're having a small ceremony next month. Just close friends and family. I'd really like it if you could come." Me. The invitation caught me off guard. "Of course you've been more than just a boss to me, especially through everything that happened with." He paused. "Well, you know, you've been a friend, and it would mean a lot to have you there." I was touched by his words. "I'd be honored." "James, thank you." I looked relieved. "Great. I'll send you the details. It's nothing fancy. Just a small garden ceremony at Claire's parents' place. Then dinner afterward." "It sounds perfect," I said sincerely. After James left, I sat thinking about how strange life could be. A year ago, I'd been perfectly content with my solitary existence, keeping my family at arm's length and focusing solely on my career. Now, I was being invited to my assistant's wedding. An assistant who had nearly become my brother-in-law. The day of James's wedding arrived warm and clear. The ceremony was exactly as he described: simple, intimate, in a beautifully landscaped garden behind a charming craftsman home. Claire was lovely, radiating happiness as she and James exchanged vows under an arch of summer flowers. During the reception, I sat with a small group of James's colleagues, enjoying the relaxed atmosphere and excellent food. As I watched James and Claire laughing together, surrounded by people who genuinely cared for them, I felt a pang of something not quite envy, but awareness of what was missing in my own life. My career had always been my priority, especially after my divorce. I'd convinced myself that professional success was enough, that I didn't need deep personal connections. But seeing the joy on James's face made me wonder if I'd been wrong. "Amanda." I turned to see James approaching his new wife beside him. "I'm so glad you could make it," he said. "I wanted to properly introduce you to Claire." Claire smiled warmly. "James has told me so much about you. Thank you for coming today. I wouldn't have missed it," I replied honestly. It was a beautiful ceremony. As they moved on to greet other guests, I found myself smiling. Maybe it was the romantic setting or the champagne, but I felt a renewed sense of possibility. My family situation might be a mess, but that didn't mean the rest of my life had to be. I stayed until the last guests were leaving, congratulated James and Claire one final time, and drove home under a sky full of stars. My apartment felt quiet but not lonely. When I returned, I kicked off my heels, made a cup of tea, and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. I felt a surprising sense of contentment. My parents might never appreciate me for who I was, My sister might never see beyond her jealousy and entitlement, but I had built a good life for myself, a successful career, and now perhaps new friendships forming. Sometimes family isn't who you're born to, but who you choose to let into your life. At 34, I was finally learning that lesson, and it felt like a new beginning. Story 3. My name's Aiden Miller. I'm 29. And when I was 8, my parents gave me away because I wasn't the daughter they had planned their lives around. People blink when I say that. They think I mean, because we were poor or because they were sick. But no, we weren't poor. And they weren't sick. Scott and Karen Miller had a tidy townhouse, a minivan that smelled like air freshener, and a family photo wall full of one glowing face, Lily. My sister, the golden child. I wasn't golden. I was the noise in the background. For as long as I can remember, I learned to be quiet in our kitchen. It was spotless, color coordinated, and always cold. I had a teddy bear with one missing eye that I kept taping back on. That tape finally ran out the night the sky broke open. I was hiding under the kitchen table. The bear clutched against my chest. When my mother's voice ripped through the rain, "You promised you'd handle this." "Scott, I can't live like this anymore." My father's tone was flat, measured like always. "I already called the Baptist camp. They know a couple who's looking to adopt." He said it like he was arranging a package delivery. I should have known right then that my life was about to be handed off to someone else. The next morning, the sky was gray and the house smelled like old coffee. A man and woman stood in the doorway, Elaine and Victor Hayes. Elaine had kind eyes and a raincoat a size too big. Victor wore a tie that didn't sit right. "We're here to take you to breakfast," Elaine said softly. My parents didn't pack a bag. They didn't ask what toy I wanted to bring. I left with the clothes on my back and that broken bear. Lily stood at the top of the stairs, hair braided, perfect as always. She didn't wave. That morning wasn't a surprise. It was the end of a pattern I'd been too young to name. Second grade art show. I spent 2 weeks drawing our townhouse brick by brick, hiding a little cat behind the curtains. I showed it to my mom like it was treasure. She glanced once, folded it in half, and used it as scrap paper. "Don't be so sensitive," she said when my eyes watered. "We can't keep everything." Field trip fee, $45. I waited until after dinner to ask. Dad didn't even look up from the bills. "We can't spend money on extras." That same night, I overheard him hand Lily his card. "You'll need new ballet shoes. Don't go over 70. Incident 3 birthday season. Lily turned 10. She got a bike with pink ribbons. 3 weeks later, I turned 8. My party was a store-bought muffin with a candle. Mom slid a $5 bill into my hand and said, "Don't make a mess." I told myself it didn't matter, but it did. Then came the chores. "Aiden, wash the car." "Aiden, rake the yard." "Aiden, clean Lily's bathroom. She's got practice." If I did everything perfectly, no one noticed. If I missed a spot, Dad would stand in the doorway and say, "Do it again. Do it right." One afternoon, I came home to find Lily's bed covered in new clothes, jeans with patches, glitter shoes, sequin tops. "Nothing on mine. Are any of those for me?" I asked quietly. Mom didn't look up. "You already have something to wear." Something in me cracked. I grabbed the scissors and started cutting every sleeve, every hem. It wasn't hate. It was desperation. Mom stormed in, screamed, and shoved me hard into the wall. "You are a mistake. A damn mistake." The words stuck like splinters. That night, when Dad came home, he didn't even sit down. "Aiden," he said, eyes fixed on the floor. "Tomorrow, you're going to live with other people." He said it like he was canceling a subscription. The next morning, Elaine and Victor stood on the porch. Awkward but kind. Elaine crouched to my level. "You ready?" "Sweetheart." I looked past her. Mom was at the window but didn't open the door. She just watched. Victor held out his hand. I took it. That was the moment the world split before and after. The drive was silent. Rain drummed on the windshield. I counted the seconds between lightning and thunder. 5 seconds. 1 mile. I still do that sometimes. Elaine and Victor's house was smaller. Cluttered. Alive. A radio hummed from the kitchen. The hallway smelled like cinnamon. You can take the room with the map wallpaper, Elaine said. Victor hung it crooked. And he refuses to admit it. Victor laughed. We'll get you a new jacket before winter. And maybe fix that bear properly, teach you to sew it yourself. I didn't know what to say. No one had ever offered to teach me anything before. For the first few nights, I kept my shoes beside the bed habit, waiting to be sent away again. But they didn't. They tucked me in, asked how school went, called me by name like it meant something. 6 months later, the adoption was finalized in court. My last name stayed Miller, but my heart belonged to Hayes. Even now, I can still see that kitchen table, that rain, that bear. That's where everything started and where one family ended. But what they didn't know was that giving me away didn't erase me. It planted a fuse. And years later, when that man would show up at my company door pretending he wanted to make things right, every drop of that storm would come rushing back. For now, I was just a kid in a new house, learning what safety felt like. I should have known the calm wouldn't last forever. When I first moved in with Victor and Elaine Hayes, I didn't understand what home meant. I thought it was something you earned by keeping quiet. But they didn't rescue me with big gestures. They rescued me with consistency. The kind that feels almost boring until you realize it's saving your life. The first week, Elaine labeled a shelf in the fridge. Aiden's A. Inside were a few yogurts, an apple, and a note that said, "You can always have more. This is just proof there's something here for you." The second week, Victor sat me at the kitchen table and taught me how to thread a needle. "You want that bear to look like he's been through a war or through a repair shop," he teased. I grinned without realizing it. The thread tugged tight. And for the first time, something broken stayed together. For months, I waited for the rules to flip. In my old house, kindness was currency. You could lose it overnight. But here, the rules were written on a small whiteboard near the door. Shoes off. Ask before borrowing tools. Say if something feels wrong. Simple. Permanent. Safe. 6 months later, the court finalized the adoption. I remember Elaine kneeling to tie my shoe before we went inside the courthouse. "This is the easy part," she whispered. "The hard part is learning. You deserve to stay." I didn't believe her then. But she was right. Victor's trunk was an adventure. He sold socket sets, drill bits, tool belts, ordinary things. But he treated each customer like an old friend. On Saturdays, he'd let me ride along. He had a route through small neighborhoods and mechanic shops where people knew his name. "You can't sell to everyone," he said once, flipping through his spiral notebook. "But you can be honest with everyone." He wrote down names, birthdays, even yokes. When someone bought a hammer, he'd remember it months later. Watching him, I realized business wasn't about money. It was about being the kind of person people trust to come back. Elaine worked at Finch Street Bakery, and she always smelled faintly of sugar and cinnamon. After her shift, she'd stop by the garage and survey Victor's chaos. "You need a system," she'd say, brushing flour off her sleeve. "Otherwise, you'll die under a pile of wrenches." By fall, we had pegboards, chalklabes, and a ledger. Victor started paying me $9 an hour to sort and clean. He handed me a white envelope every Friday, with my hours scribbled on the front. "When this hits 300, he said, "we'll open a bank account." I hit it by November. When the banker handed me the form and called me sir, I almost cried. It wasn't about the money, it was about permanence. Winter came early that year. And so did the idea. One of Victor's customers, a contractor, asked if he could stop by instead of waiting for deliveries. "You should have a storefront," he joked. 2 months later, we did. A small unit on Carlton Avenue. 700 square feet. $525 a month. Elaine typed up Victor's sales notes as proof we could pay. This isn't a dream. She told the landlord. It's data. We opened Hayes Supply Co. with 2 sawhorses for a counter and a label maker that barely worked. Our first day, we sold $186 worth of tools. Victor said it was luck. Elaine said it was faith. I said it was both. For as long as I can remember, I thought being useful was the only way to be loved. But the Hyases didn't treat work like a test, they treated it like trust. Don't earn dinner. Victor would tell me. Earn experience. By the time I hit 16, I was running inventory better than half the local shops. By 18, I was helping negotiate with suppliers. When graduation came, Elaine cried through the whole ceremony. You're the first Hayes to finish high school with honors, she said. Victor corrected her. First, but not last. College felt impossible at first. Tuition looked like another planet's currency. But then the acceptance letter came with a small scholarship and work-study attached. Elaine stuck it on the fridge like a piece of art. Progress is the only fair measure, she told me. I studied business operations. But really, I was studying Victor. When the professor explained supply chains, I saw the garage in every diagram. When they said micro-distribution, I thought, we already built that. I graduated at 21. Victor cried. Elaine hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. We took a picture outside the auditorium, me holding my diploma, both of them smiling like the sun came up just for us. 2 years later, they decided to take a weekend trip, something they almost never did. A bed and breakfast 2 hours north. Hiking. A rare bit of rest. They never made it home. A truck lost its brakes on a blind curve. The deputy told me it was instantaneous, as if that word could soften it. I handled the paperwork like a machine. I signed. I nodded. I thanked strangers who didn't know what to say. Then I went back to the shop because that's what they would have done. When the will came, it was painfully simple. To our son, Aiden, we leave everything because he already gave us everything that matters. I didn't reading it. I just folded it carefully and set it beside the register. Then I opened the store the next morning. The garage became a full warehouse. The store became 2 branches. I hired more people, some fresh out of school, some who just needed a second chance. Within 5 years, Hayes Supply Co. had 100 employees. Every Friday, I'd sit at my desk after closing and whisper into the quiet Elaine. The pegboard's still straight. Victor. The receipt printer's still broken, but we keep it for luck. Grief never really leaves. It just learns to walk beside you. And sometimes, in that quiet, I swore I could hear Victor's voice again. Tension makes things stronger unless you yank. He was right. What I didn't know then was that life was preparing me for a different kind of tension, the kind that doesn't come from hard work, but from blood you thought you'd outgrown. The night I hit $1 million in total revenue, I stood alone in the warehouse. The lights off except for the blue glow of the sign outside. That's when the phone rang. Security. There's a man here asking for you. The guard said. Says his name is Scott Miller. Says he's your father. I froze. 22 years had passed since I'd last heard that voice. And in that moment, the distance between lightning and thunder vanished. When the elevator doors slid open that night, I thought I was ready. I'd faced audits, angry suppliers, even the slow burn of grief. But nothing in my 30 years prepared me for what was waiting in the lobby. Scott Miller, my father. He looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders slumped, beard unkempt, clothes that had seen better years. The man who once ordered me around like I was a chore now stood under fluorescent light, clutching a grocery bag as if it were a lifeline. Aiden, he said softly. The sound of my name in his mouth made something twist in my chest. Behind him sat 2 women in their late 20s. For a second, I didn't recognize them. Then I saw the same blue-gray eyes I used to see in the mirror. My sisters. I said quietly. Megan and Danielle. They both looked up, uncertain smiles flickering. I hadn't seen them since the day Elaine and Victor picked me up. Back then, there was only one sister who mattered, Lily. The golden child. She wasn't here. Scott followed my gaze. Lily's not with us anymore, he said. Voice low. Cancer. Few years back. 1,000 things rushed through me at once: anger, pity, confusion, but mostly disbelief. The name I'd carried as a scar was suddenly gone. Like a door closed forever. Scott gestured behind him. These are my girls, he said, nodding toward Megan and Danielle. And their kids. 4 small children were sitting near the reception sofa, legs crossed, crayons scattered on the coffee table. Your mother's gone too, Scott continued. She ran off with some man. These 2 came back home with their kids. No help. No money. I didn't answer. My silence made him restless. He twisted his cap, eyes darting to the security guard standing nearby. You've done well for yourself, he said at last. Real proud of you. Son. That word again. Son. It didn't sound like family. It sounded like leverage. What do you want? Scott, I asked quietly. It took a deep breath. Not much. Just some help. Maybe a loan. Or, he hesitated. Maybe something bigger. Something right. He pulled a photograph from his pocket, faded, folded, barely holding together. A boy under a Christmas tree, holding a lopsided gift. Me. I think about that day sometimes, he said. Wish things had gone different. I stared at him, searching for something: remorse. Maybe. But behind his eyes, I only saw calculation. Then came the real reason he was here. I want you to do for them what those people did for you, he said. Adopt my grandkids. Give them a home. The sentence didn't land. It detonated. You want me to raise your daughter's children? I asked slowly. Because you couldn't raise your own. He flinched. They deserve the same chance you had. You turned out fine. Didn't you? Behind him, one of the kids, a little girl, maybe 6, looked up and whispered, Are you Uncle Aiden? I nodded faintly. Yeah, I guess I am. Scott took that as victory. See, you care. You've got a good heart. No, I said. I have boundaries. He blinked. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'll help the innocent, I said, stepping closer. But not the guilty. I turned to the security guard. Call my lawyer. He's still upstairs. Scott frowned. A laver you don't need. But I did. Because I was about to draw the line that would define the rest of my life. When my lawyer arrived, I didn't look away from Scott. I'll set up trust funds for the children, I said. Full tuition. Materials. Transportation. If they stop attending, the help ends. The money goes directly to the schools, none to you or your daughters. Scott's jaw clenched. You think that makes you noble? I'm not noble, I said. Just done. He stepped forward, voice rising. You think you can erase us with money? You erased me with silence, I replied. This is me making sure the next generation doesn't pay for it. Megan began to cry. Danielle covered her face. Scott glared at me for a long second, then turned away. He left. For months. He stayed gone. But I couldn't stop thinking about that little girl. Are you Uncle Aiden? Her voice kept replaying. Soft and curious. Like she didn't know what the word family meant yet. So I made sure the funds were activated within a week. The kids started school, clean uniforms, backpacks, smiles too wide for their faces. They didn't know who was paying for any of it. And that was exactly how I wanted it. A few months later, the report cards started arriving in the mail. Each one signed in colorful crayon. Thank you, Uncle Aiden. I kept them all in a folder labeled New Roots. Then, one evening, I found Scott waiting in the parking lot, alone this time. His jacket was torn, and his face carried that same mix of exhaustion and bitterness I remembered from childhood. Aiden, he called. Wait. I gave you my answer, I said, unlocking my car. He stepped closer. I just need a little money. Just enough to get by. No, I said flatly. You've got more than you could ever spend. He snapped. You think you're better than me? No, I said, turning to face him. Just different. He swallowed hard. I was young. I didn't know how to be a father. You were 36, I said quietly. You knew. Something broke in his face. Maybe pride. Maybe the illusion that he still had power. He looked at the ground, muttered something, and walked away into the night. He didn't come back after that. Years passed. The kids grew up, graduated, and started working, one by one. They came to me for internships, first in the warehouse, then the admin office, exactly how Victor had done with me. One afternoon, the oldest Liam looked up from a stack of invoices. Uncle Aiden, he said, Grandpa used to tell us you were angry because you were jealous. But I think he was jealous of you. I smiled faintly. Maybe. But I didn't build all this to prove him wrong. I built it so you'd never have to ask the questions I asked at 8 years old. He nodded slowly. Like why your parents didn't want you. Exactly. He didn't push further. And I was grateful. Some truths lie better unspoken. Sometimes. Late at night. I still thought about Scott's last words. We're still blood. But blood isn't a guarantee, it's just chemistry. Family is the people who stay when things break. I had learned that from Victor and Elaine. They didn't share my blood. They shared my life. And maybe that's why. When I looked at the grown faces of those kids I'd once promised to help, I finally realized something. I hadn't just broken the cycle. I'd buried it. By the time I turned 35, life had settled into something close to peace. The company had grown beyond anything Victor and Elaine could have imagined. 3 warehouses, 200 employees, trucks with our logo rumbling across state lines. Most days were predictable. Numbers balanced. Systems worked. The ghosts were quiet. Then one afternoon, a courier dropped an envelope on my desk. No return address, just my name in shaky handwriting. Inside a legal document. Petition for financial assistance, filed by Scott Miller. I read it twice. Then once more. Slower. The letter wasn't emotional, it was procedural. Like a form someone filled out at a library computer. But the words were clear: he wanted money. As repayment for parental investment. It was absurd. A man who gave me away before my 10th birthday now wanted compensation for it. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, he showed up again. Not in the lobby this time, but inside the loading bay, standing between pallets of boxed inventory like a man who'd wandered into someone else's life. He must have slipped in during the shift change, when the dock doors were still open and the guards were swapping posts. When I spotted him, the air around me froze. He looked worse than before. His jacket hung limp, and his eyes were red. Not from crying, but from the kind of exhaustion that lives in your bones. Aiden, he said, raising his hands as if surrendering. You got my letter. I nodded. You shouldn't be here. Scott, this is private property. I didn't mean any harm. He said quickly. I just thought maybe face-to-face would be better. Better for what I asked? For guilt or for leverage? He took a breath. For closure. For family. That word again. Family. It always sounded like a weapon when he used it. Family, I said quietly. You forfeited that word the day you sent me away. He winced, but didn't leave. I know I made mistakes. Your mother and I. Things were hard back then. But we're still blood. Aiden. Blood. I repeated. You think that's what matters? He hesitated. It should. We're connected. No matter what. No, I said. We're not connected. We're coincidental. He flinched again. The word landing like a slap. I'm not asking for much. He tried again. Just enough to breathe. To start over. Maybe a place to stay for a while. You already got your fresh start. I said. It was the day you gave me away. Something in his expression shifted from pleading to anger. You think you're better than me? Don't you? He hissed. Just because those people, your perfect parents, handed you everything. I stepped closer. My voice low and steady. They didn't hand me anything. They showed me how to build it. There's a difference. He shook his head. You think success erases what we had. You can't change blood. I don't want to. I said. I just refuse to let it define me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of forklifts filled the silence between us. He sighed, almost whispering. I'm sorry. Aiden. I really am. And for the first time, I almost believed him. But apologies without change are just more noise. You don't get to show up decades later and rewrite history. I said. He blinked hard. I wasn't ready to be a father. You were 36. I reminded him softly. You weren't supposed to be perfect. Just present. The words seemed to drain the fight out of him. His shoulders sagged. I don't know how to fix this. He said quietly. You don't. I replied. You just stop breaking things. He looked at me one last time. You'll regret this one day. He said, voice trembling with anger that didn't have a place to land. I almost laughed. Regret, I said. The only thing I regret is that I ever believed I was the mistake. He turned, muttering something I couldn't hear, and walked out through the half-open dock door. The rain outside swallowed him whole. I stood there for a long time, staring at the wet footprints he'd left on the concrete. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, the same old table Elaine had bought from a thrift store decades ago, and opened the folder labeled New Roots. Inside were letters, drawings, and report cards from Scott's grandchildren, the same children he wanted me to save. They didn't know the details, only that someone named Uncle Aiden believed in them. And that was enough. I traced my thumb over one of their notes. Thank you for my new backpack. That was the moment I realized something simple but final. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. 2 weeks later, Megan called. Her voice shook. Uncle Aiden, she said. Still using the title, even though I was her brother. Dad's gone. Gone, I asked. What do you mean? He left a note on the kitchen table. Said he was sorry. Said he didn't want to be a burden anymore. We don't know where he went. Silence hung heavy between us. Do you want me to look for him? I asked. No. She whispered. He made his choice. After the call, I drove for hours, without a destination, just me, the road, and the sound of rain hitting the windshield. It felt too familiar. I thought of that boy under the kitchen table all those years ago, counting the seconds between lightning and thunder. I whispered. 5 seconds. 1 mile. But this storm wasn't mine anymore. Months passed. The kids, the next generation, kept growing. Liam managed logistics. Nora handled HR. The younger two were finishing college. They didn't carry the same kind of hurt their mothers did. And that alone felt like victory. One evening, Liam stayed late to help me sort reports. He leaned back in his chair. Thoughtful. You know, he said. Grandpa used to tell us you were angry because you were jealous. But I think he was jealous of you. I smiled faintly. Maybe. But I didn't build this to prove him wrong. I built it so you'd never have to wonder if you were wanted. He nodded. I don't. And just like that, the conversation ended. No drama. No closure. Just quiet understanding. Sometimes I still think about Scott's last words. We're still blood. Maybe he meant it as comfort. Maybe as guilt. But I finally understood what Victor once told me when I was 16. After a tough day at the shop, family isn't the people who make you. It's the people who stay. I never saw Scott again. No letters. No calls. Just silence. And for the first time in my life, silence didn't scare me. It felt earned. It's strange how peace arrives. Not with fireworks. Not with applause, just quietly. Like sunlight slipping through blinds you forgot to close. By the time I turned 40, it had been 5 years since Scott disappeared. He'd left a note on my sister's kitchen table and vanished from the map. No address. No calls. No closure. At first, I checked missing person reports every few weeks. Then every few months. Eventually, I stopped. Because one day, I realized I wasn't looking for him anymore. I was looking for the boy he'd abandoned, hoping he'd finally been seen. But that boy didn't need saving anymore. The company had become a machine that hummed with purpose. 3 warehouses. 150 employees. Steady contracts. Stable growth. The name Hayes Supply Co. had become something solid, part of the town's backbone. Liam, now in his late 20s, ran logistics. His sister Nora managed HR. The younger two, Evan and Grace, were finishing college. Every Friday, they dropped by the office to eat leftover donuts from the break room and tease me about not taking vacations. Uncle Aiden, Nora said once, hands on her hips. You've got enough vacation days to retire twice. I'm not sure the company would survive that much free time. I joked. They laughed, rolling their eyes. But beneath their teasing was something I never got tired of seeing: trust. The kind that doesn't come from obligation, but from being loved right the first time. One rainy afternoon, I drove out to the old garage, the original shop. It still smelled faintly of oil and metal. The pegboard walls were dotted with old chalk labels, and the light flickered like it always had. I ran my hand along the workbench. There were scratches shaped like memories, places where Victor's hammer had slipped, where I'd once spilled paint and tried to scrub it off before Elaine saw. In the bottom drawer, I found it, the little sewing kit Victor had bought me when I was 8. The thread was brittle now. The needle rusted, but the box still snapped shut with the same sharp click. I slipped it into my pocket, not because I needed it, but because it reminded me that things could be mended, even people. That evening, I drove to the lake north of town, the same one Victor used to fish at. Even though he never caught much, rain drifted across the surface, soft and rhythmic. I sat on the hood of my truck and watched the ripples spread, one after another, until they reached the shore. For a long time, I thought about Scott, not as the man who'd hurt me, but as a person who'd simply never learned how to stay. Maybe he really did feel sorry. Maybe he just ran out of ways to say it. Either way, I didn't need him to anymore. I whispered into the quiet, I forgive you, but I don't miss you. And for the first time in my life, the words didn't taste bitter. They just existed. When I got back to the office, Liam was waiting. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his laptop open. You okay? Uncle Aiden, he asked. Yeah, I said. Just needed some air. He hesitated. We got an offer today. Big one. A company in Chicago wants to buy us out, full acquisition. They say they'll keep the name. I raised an eyebrow. And what do you think? He grinned. I think I don't want to sell. This isn't just a company, it's a story. And I'm not done writing my chapter yet. I smiled. Slow and proud. Good answer. He chuckled. Guess I learned from the best. That night, when everyone left, I stayed behind. The office was quiet. The kind of quiet that hums instead of echoes. On the wall across from my desk hung 3 framed photos, Victor and Elaine, standing outside the first shop, their smiles wide and proud. The 4 grandkids, my nieces and nephews at their graduation, holding certificates with the kind of grin you only have when you know you're loved. And one photo of me at 21, shaking Victor's hand, the day we filed the company's first papers. Below them, a small plaque read, "Family isn't who gives you life. It's who helps you live it." I looked at those faces, all frozen mid-laughter, and realized something. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was legacy. A few hours later, as I locked the doors, I noticed movement across the street. A man in a gray coat stood under the flickering streetlight, motionless. For half a second, my chest tightened, same posture, and same slump of the shoulders. Then a car passed, and he was gone. Maybe it was just a stranger. Maybe it was memory playing tricks. Either way, I didn't chase it. Some ghosts deserve to rest. A month later, we held our 15th anniversary for Hayes Supply Co. The warehouse was decked with string lights and handmade banners. Employees brought their families. Kids ran between aisles of tools like they were playgrounds. When it was time for speeches, they pushed me toward the front. I cleared my throat, the mic squeaking a little. "I don't have much to say," I began, scanning the crowd, except that this place started because two people believed in a boy no one else wanted. I paused, the lump rising in my throat. They taught me that everything broken can be fixed. Tools, business, people, you just have to want it bad enough. I looked at Liam and Nora in the front row, their faces lit with pride. "I used to think revenge was how you made peace with the past," I said. "Now I know peace comes when you stop waiting for the past to apologize." The room went silent. Then someone started clapping. Soon, everyone joined in. And for once, I didn't flinch from the noise. Later that night, after the cleanup, I found a small brown package on my desk. No name, no note, just twine around old paper. Inside was a photograph I'd never seen before, me at 8 years old, standing in front of Victor and Elaine's first truck, clutching my teddy bear. On the back, written in shaky penmanship, were 4 words: "You kept your promise." I didn't know who left it. Maybe one of the kids found it in storage. Maybe the world has its own way of tying loose ends. Either way, I smiled, because they were right. I had kept my promise, not just to Victor and Elaine, not just to those kids who needed a chance, but to that terrified little boy hiding under a kitchen table who once believed he wasn't worth staying for. The lights clicked off one by one. I stepped outside, locked the door, and looked up at the clear night sky. For the first time in decades, there was no thunder waiting behind the clouds. Just quiet. Just peace. Just home. Story 2. I wish you'd never been born. Even your birth ruined my life. That's what my mom said right in front of the guests, right under the string lights and flowered arch where my sister had just said "I do." And my brother. He laughed loud enough for the entire table to turn. "My name is Rachel. And from wherever you're watching this, remain with me." Have you ever realized in a single moment that your family never saw you as human? I refrained from crying. I didn't scream. I just set my champagne down, pushed back my chair, and walked out of the wedding like I was walking out of a fire. Computer controlled. But burning inside, they didn't call after me. Not my mom. Not my sister and her designer gown. Not even my dad, who used to tuck me in after nightmares. No one cared. I walked straight down the gravel driveway in heels, my satin dress catching on thorns, my breath shaking. And when I reached the gate, I turned around just once, and I promised myself they will never see me crawl again. That night, while they danced and toasted to the perfect daughter, I packed up my life. I erased myself from family group chats, deleted photos, blocked numbers. The silence felt better than the noise ever did. And then at 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said, "Pick up." A trembling voice whispered, "Rachel, please tell me this isn't true." "Did you really?" I didn't let her finish. I said 4 words. "Look at the homepage." I hung up after that. And in that instant, halfway between anger and heartache. I grinned, since nothing could stop what I had started now that it was in motion. The world would find out who the true failure was tomorrow. As well as my mom. Never again would she smirk. I was merely a mistake to her. However, I was going to make headlines for the rest of the world. You don't learn to plot retaliation. Growing up, you pray that your mother will love you as much as she loves your siblings. I hope you stay quiet and clean the house if you receive straight A's. She will no longer regard you as a discoloration. She is unable to wash out. Denise. My mother. Loved looks. Her entire world was carefully planned, like her picture-perfect living room on Pinterest, where nobody could sit. Or the breathless, fake laugh she made at church. In private. However, I was the family's letdown. She never forgives herself for the accident. At 19, I became pregnant. By themselves. Horrified. She was being wild while working double shifts at a diner and telling everyone who would listen that I was off somewhere. She threw my brother Chris a welcome home barbecue after he was released from probation, after he was found guilty of DUI at the age of 22. I didn't break. Though, I created my own life. I gave my daughter Lily a loving upbringing. I earned a degree in data analytics, took night classes, and got a job at a Fortune 500 company. However, I remained the girl who destroyed her life in their eyes. The wedding wasn't the last straw. It happened a week prior to the ceremony. My business was being bought out. I had been working on a project in secret for 3 years. So I was the only one not in a panic. An AI-powered tool for real-time financial fraud detection. The board offered me $2.4 million to stay on and develop it solely under their brand after my manager presented it to them. I had kept it a secret. Not even Lily. Until the ink dried. I wanted to keep it to myself. However, I then made a mistake. I told the bride. The golden girl. My sister Jenna. I reasoned that she might notice me if I shared something genuine. She vowed not to speak a word. She expressed her pride in me. Gave me the same hug she gave me as a child. I heard my mother laughing on the phone 2 days later. Rachel is absurd. She believes she created $1 million invention. Even balancing a checkbook is beyond her capabilities. I realized then that the wedding had never been about love. I was the target of a joke on a stage. They were unaware, however, that I had already prepared my departure. And he set it all off when my mother made fun of me in front of those string lights. They believe I left in silence. They don't know. I carried the detonator as I left. When I got home that evening, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop, poured a glass of wine, and removed my heels, which were still resonating with laughter. I wasn't broken. Despite their belief that I was honing my skills. 2 years ago, I started a digital trail. Every petty slight, every whisper about me in emails I wasn't meant to see. Every time my mother rerouted money from Grandma's trust into Chris's failed businesses, I backed it all up. From Jenna's backdoor job placements to Chris's shady crypto scam that had quietly defrauded 3 families at our church. I wasn't just building tech. I was building leverage. And the real kicker, I never left the family group chat. I just needed it. So I saw it. The photogenic posted hours after the wedding. Me cut mid-walk back. Turned captioned when the family screw up. Makes a dramatic exit face with tears of joy. Chris commented, probably going to cry into her broke girl wine. My mother responded with 3 crying laugh emojis. I didn't answer. Instead, I started forwarding files. The first went to a private investigator. I'd already vetted someone skilled in financial forensics. The next batch to a journalist friend I'd met through work. One who was itching to do a piece on corruption hiding in perfect suburban families. Then came the anonymous tip to the IRS, and the final move. I changed the password on the shared Dropbox folder Jenna and I had used to collaborate on her wedding slideshow. Why? Because the final file, the one labeled vows and a final data movie, wasn't what she thought. She'd uploaded the wrong video weeks ago. A screen recording a call between her and Chris where they joked about screwing me over. Where Jenna said, Let her drown in her spreadsheets. She'll always be trash with a pretty resume where Chris called Lily my daughter. The oops baby. With bad hair. I kept that file quietly until the moment was right. And, oh, that moment was coming because 2 days later, Jenna sent us text. Hey fam. Wedding rewatch party at our place this Saturday. 2 hearts. My fingers shook with something dangerous. Not fear. Purpose. I RSVP, yes. Then I sent the file to the AV guy she'd hired. The one whose sister I'd mentored last year. And I told him, play this first. Let them gather. Let them sip champagne. Let them lean in close. Because the truth was about to hit like a wrecking ball through their glass house. Saturday came cloaked in sunshine and smugness. Jenny's condo was packed. Lace garlands still dangled from door frames. The words "Forever Starts Now" shimmered in gold above a rented projector screen. Everyone had their phones out. Drinks in hand. Faces full of post-wedding glow. They hadn't seen me yet. I stood in the back by the patio doors. Wearing black. Jenna squealed. Arms wrapped around Mom, who wore the same pearls that she used to say was for her real daughter's big day. Chris was pouring mimosas. Laughing loud, like someone who'd never been afraid of karma. I tapped the heavy guy on the shoulder and handed him the flash drive. He blinked once, then nodded. He didn't need reminding. He remembered how I helped his sister get her first coding internship when no one else believed in her. He remembered the long nights I stayed on Zoom teaching her Java. Now it was showtime. The lights dimmed. People clapped. Jenna clinked a glass and giggled. Okay. Y'all get ready to cry again. Best day of my life. Incoming? They expected slower Mo walks and teary vows. Instead, the audio hit like a gunshot. Jenna's voice crystal clear. Let her drown in her spreadsheets. She'll always be trash with a pretty resume. Gasps, real sharp ones. Chris's laugh followed oily and cruel, and her kid that oops baby with the messed up curls. Poor thing's going to look like her loser mom. Dead silence. Someone dropped their drink. I didn't blink. The video kept rolling. The two of them sitting side by side. Mockingly. Mocking Lily. Chris calling Mom a pro at playing victim. And Jenna giggling. She'll guilt trip me into giving up that trust money eventually. Just wait. I watched my mother's face crumble. Her glass slipped from her hand. Shattered. Jenna shrieked. Lunged for the projector. Too late. The damage was done. Like poison sprayed on roses. No taking it back. The room turned. Uncles. Aunts. Family. Friends. The same ones who'd clapped when Mom made her speech at the wedding. Now stared in horror. Me. I stepped into the light. It was only then that they saw me standing tall. With a steely spine and a betrayed heart. When I said that, my voice remained steady. I learned how to keep quiet from you. However, I unlearned it. Jenna's face turned completely white. Chris stumbled over the word context. Just as her phone rang. Mom opened her mouth and shut it. The whole room leaned in as she looked down. Froze. And then whispered the words. This isn't possible. However, it was. And that was just the beginning. She let the phone drop. Like a warning bell. It clattered against the marble floor. I remained motionless. I didn't have to. The damage was doing the talking. As the video came to an end, what the voice on the other end continued to reverberate from the screen before fading into silence. It was so quiet that you could hear footsteps 2 rooms away clicking on the kitchen tiles. Once more. Mom's shaking fingers grasped for the phone. Her voice, which I hardly recognized, answered, thin and weak. Horrified. Hi there. She fixed her gaze on mine. Has the individual spoken? Then, like a slow bleed, the color left her face. No. She muttered. No. She refused. I took a small step forward to ensure that everyone could see me. Jenna was the first to stagger over to me. How on earth did you do that? Me, as calm as ever. I cocked my head. I simply hit the play button. Chris made an effort to enlarge his chest. We were hacked. Chris, you're careful, I said. Perhaps you should take a seat before your knees buckle. I am fully aware of the number of texts you sent Jenna while having an affair with your boss's wife. Chris's boss and his wife were present. So, there was a gasp from a significant other. Mom had invited everyone. It turned out. Slowly. I turned to face her. That call. Didn't it come from Harold Gaines? She moved her lips but did not make a sound. I grinned. I suppose that what you said about his wife and your intention to deprive me of the trust my father left me did not sit well with Harold. Jenna spoke in a wild, high voice. What's the point of involving him at all since you involved my daughter in this? Sharp as glass. I said. To make yourself feel taller. You made fun of a young girl. I surveyed the space. You all chuckled. I cleaned up the family messes while you were all watching. Make the cakes. Pay for mom's medications and drive her to her appointments. I became disposable the instant Jenna had her moment. There was a murmur from the rear. Hold on. Would have faith. At that point, Mom lost it. As if her bones were giving out. She collapsed into a chair. Because the questions were starting to come now. Not for me. For her. How come you didn't tell us Amy's father abandoned her? Jenna was attempting to access it. But why? And more. I spoke softly as I leaned in. Mom? Don't worry. I retained the original. The one you didn't want anyone to see. That is. The waiter who had previously brought me the note returned to the room with an envelope in his hand. As her mouth opened in horror, Mom whimpered. Jenna lunged once more. It's too late. Our father's sister, Aunt Carla, received the envelope from the waiter. Carla pulled it open. She looked over the paper. Then she said, Oh my God. Looking up, Aunt Carla's voice cracked as she read the will aloud to my daughter Emily and Grace. I leave the full ownership of the lakeside house and the adjoining lands. On her 30th birthday, she will receive all of the money in the private family account. Everyone turned to Mom after she stopped. Have you created a new? Well, Carla's voice trembled as she asked. Did you mention that there wasn't one to the others? Mom said nothing. He didn't have to, because her silence was louder than any scream. The room erupted. You lied to us, Uncle Gary shouted. You let Jenna plan to sell the house. That land was always meant to stay in the family. Jenna's lips curled. Oh. Please. Nobody cared about that dump until now. And Emmy was never supposed to get anything. My hands clenched. I took a step forward. I was never supposed to get anything. Or you wanted me to believe that. Jenna scoffed. But her eyes started around like a cornered fox. You're such a victim. Emmy, you always were funny. I said. That's what you said in the video right before you called Mom a useful tool for manipulating me. Gasps again. Mom shot to her feet. You recorded that I didn't have to. I said. Your own security camera did. The one by the guest house. Jenna spun to her fiancé. You're not really believing any of this. Are you? He didn't answer. He was staring at the screen. Jaw tight. Eyes glazed because the next clip had just started playing. Jenna standing in Mom's kitchen, saying the words, Don't worry. She's dumb. We'll guilt her into signing it all over. Like always. She just wants to feel loved. That's her weakness. And in the background, Mom's voice crystal clear. You're right. She always folds when she thinks I care. Quiet. Thick cutting. Absolutely. I looked out into the throng. You have spent your entire life protecting these individuals. Those who made you smile during dinner. When Dad passed away. Who shed fake tears. Carla then turned away. She appeared queasy. Is there another person present? Perhaps a cousin whispered. It was she who supported him while he was in the hospital. Not Jenna. Not Chris. Mom sprang at the screen, attempting to turn it off. It's too late. Everyone had had enough. Her image was ghoulish, distorted in the middle, and froze. I gazed at the space. Now everyone is watching me. You buried me under your cruelty for years. I said. Break down. Peace is what I came for. My voice cracked a little. However, Poison does not breed peace. After that, I ignored them all. I didn't leave all at once. I walked steadily. A young woman who has nothing more to prove. The room buzzed like an open wound behind me. Some are crying. Others are whispering. A little yelling. The anger and disbelief in my mother's voice caused it to rise and crack. But I could no longer bear it. My face was baptized by the air outside. The pure were pulled. I was able to breathe once more. Before I could even reach my car, I was being chased. Hold on. Emmy. Who is it, Carla? The sound of her heels hitting the driveway was loud. She was already extending her arms when I turned. I had no idea. I promise you. I think you're real, I said quietly. She let out a breath as if she had been submerged. You did more than simply reveal their identities. I was reminded of your identity by you. She then gave me a tiny black folder containing an original copy of The Well, which it seemed Mom had lost. After your father passed away, I discovered this. It was out of date. She said. I apologize. I took her word for it. I tightened my throat and blinked hard. Why now, I inquired. Since you become complicit when you remain silent, I will no longer be complicit. That's how we stood for a while. After being played by the same queen on the same board, two women ultimately made the decision to switch roles. I gave her a hug because she needed consolation, not because I did. Then, though I didn't go home, I got into my car and drove. Only one stop remained. When I pulled up, I saw the old hospital where Dad had spent his last days. I was remembered by the front desk nurse. She gave him a little envelope. She said, I was instructed to give you this. The day before he died, your dad gave it to us. I opened it, my hands trembling. It contained a brief note written in Dad's distinctive handwriting. I've always thought of you as my favorite symphony. Beautiful, loud, and hard to ignore. The signed deed to the house was folded underneath it. Observed. Notarized. He had never wished for me to struggle for it. I had already received it from him. He simply knew that without a war, they would never give it to me. I smiled for the first time in a very long time as I pressed the paper to my chest. My retaliation wasn't finished yet, though the morning would bring that. I arrived at the county records office by sunrise, 10 minutes following the opening. The reception desk woman, bless her heart, Janine, slid the ownership documents across the counter and stamped the last page. She said, Congratulations, Miss Emerson. Officially, the property belongs to you. Not to us or the families. My own. I had parked directly in front of the house by 11 a.m. At one point, I was told that I was not welcome in the same home. According to my mother, I was not authorized to enter the house where my name was. Whispered like a curse in the corridors that I assisted in repainting. I didn't use a key this time. Weeks ago, I changed the locks. Rather, I waited while ringing the doorbell. Mom still held the phone as she answered. Mascara emerged from the public unraveling last night. Behind her eyes, bloodshot and hungover. My brother smelled of stale shame and stale whiskey. Lifting her chin like a queen who feared the peasants would bow, she said, I assume you're here to apologize. I gave her an envelope. What is this? A notice of eviction. With a steady voice, I answered, 60 days. I'm being giving. Her face broke. I own this house. No. I interrupted. Dad owned it. It's mine now. I demonstrated the act to her. Signed. Stamped. Legal. And I'm not interested in cohabiting with people who'd sell my soul just to hear applause. She stumbled backward like I'd struck her. You're doing this to punish us, no? I said, stepping into the doorway. Light behind me, like the scene from every redemption movie you've ever watched. I'm doing it so I can finally live in peace. And so you can finally sit with everything you tried to bury. My brother tried to speak, but I silenced him with a look. I don't need revenge. I whispered. I became everything you said I'd never be. That's justice enough. Then I walked away. I refrained from crying. I didn't turn around. Some people wait a lifetime for someone to come save them. But I learned something they never did. Sometimes you don't need saving.